it's time to get started. Thank you all for coming. Everybody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Peter, would you begin a roll call on the DS, please?
Peter Levitt.
Terry Noyes.
Steve Miller.
Pam Stiles.
Kathy Oblinas.
Chris Blackstone.
Chris, would you mind introducing your staff that's in the audience, who's here right now, who people may not know, some new people I don't know?
I can do that. When you came in, you might have seen seats in the front that had reserved on them. These are people that are here tonight to present for different committees that they've served on to give presentations to the school board. I can also say I can introduce other people that are sitting here, and they're here. Is that what you meant? Everybody here is ACS.
On your staff, please.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you.
All right, if we start from the front row, and as we're looking at it from the right to the left, Mr. Rick McDuff, he's a STEM teacher. He's a second career teacher for us, having come from Raytheon with a strong engineering background. Dave Miller is next to him. Dave is the library media specialist. Dave's been in a couple of schools. He's been in Maine as well, and one of his strengths is really modern and rich research techniques. Carol Foley comes to us most recently from Unity. Carol's been in a couple of different school districts with a strong background in gifted and talented education and science education. Denise Perry is, we've heard about Denise last meeting because she's recently been appointed to the board of New England Council for Teachers of English. Denise is now our curriculum and gifted and talented coordinator. Right in back, I said I'd go across. So we have a blank seat community member, Connie Racine, community member Mrs. Parker, community special ed director Jen Katzboren. This is Jen's beginning of her second full year here. Jen comes to us from the Seacoast, and this is her year here. Second year here as special ed director. Next to her, Joan Reese. Joan is a pre-K teacher for us and has a strong background in other aspects of early childhood education. Second row, Mr. Mike Major. Mike has been here, and I will say, I think he wants me to say that he's a Syracuse fan. That would be one thing that people might recognize, but Mike is also a strong member of our Teacher Tech Committee, teacher leader in technology, and one of his roles is helping with all aspects of technology directly related to education. Next to him, Derek Papasino. Derek has completed a Gateway STEM education program and brings those experiences to us as well. He's been involved in gifted and talented education with intermediate level students and with middle level students. Then we have, take a breath, then we come to Dr. Naim Syed, who is our new Director of Technology. You can hear more about him during the introduction from the school board. And to his right, our left, is Mr. Paul Roberts, who's the assistant principal. And Mr. Roberts comes to us most recently from the international school in Korea, in Seoul, Korea. We're happy to see Mr. Chris Parker, who has been one of our members. He's a community member now and parent of a preschool child and involved in many aspects of Alton. And Skip. We have Carl Nickerson, who's on the technology and the IT department. He's been involved as a tech integrator, and he's been here involved before tech integration. He's been involved in the gifted and talented program, too. So, and Angela Tyrion, if Jen sat still, there we go. Angela Tyrion is a volunteer coordinator, which is what I think of her as because that's the most interaction I have with her, but she's a paraprofessional. Now in the lower grade, she's been in the life skills program and has a strength and interest in early childhood as well as special education. So we thank these people. We also have a faculty member from the high school who's one of our parents. There you go, Mrs. Caruso. So. Is that? Everybody's present and accounted for, all right?
Thank you, Chris.
We never said stop. So.
If I could just take a moment to introduce two phenomenal additions to our administration. The first being Paul Roberts, our assistant principal, the gentleman in the purple who stood up before. To give you some idea of his background, he has spent up to 2 years in Seoul, South Korea, on an international school. He was 9 years at Farmington Elementary. I understand he was also social science department head there as well. He was a social science consultant at the Monarch School in New Hampshire for 2 to 3 years. He has taught at the Virtual Learning Academy, and most recently he was an assistant principal at Paul Elementary School in Sanbornville. That's part of the Wakefield school system. And he has taught at McIntosh College for a couple of years. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Sitting to his left and my right is Dr. Naeem Saeed, who we are absolutely thrilled to have. His credentials essentially read like the person you most want to run your technology department at any school in the country. He has a BS from the University of Engineering and Technology. He has an MBA from Southern New Hampshire University. He has a doctorate that he received at Northeastern University. He was a systems development specialist for the New Hampshire Department of Education. He was a director of Tech Community College Systems in the state of New Hampshire. He was the director, and he most recently was the assistant vice president of technology for UConn University of Connecticut. And I can tell you that my short experience with Dr. Saeed is that if he doesn't know something, he's not afraid to tell you that he doesn't know something. He will, if there is an issue or there's a problem, he will have a plan to fix that issue and the problem, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have him here on our staff. Thank you, sir. Next, we're going to be moving to policies. We put policies at the beginning, quite frankly, because it gives people time enough if they can't get here by 6 o'clock. We get to go through some of the mundane, not so much minutia, but time-consuming areas that just we have to do as part of our charge. If everybody will turn to the current policies, we have a first reading for Section E, support services. And Terry, do you want
Sure.
to initiate the?
Yep. I move that we approve the following policies for first reading. EEAA, video and audio surveillance on school property, which is a new policy. Section J, JFA residency, new policy, and JJF-R, new policy. Section K, which is school, community, and home relations, KB, KBA, KCD computers, KCDR, KDA, KDC, KDCA, KE, KEB, KEC, KECR, KR, KFA, KFAA, KFD, KHB, KIA, KJ, KJ-R, KI, KKB, KKB-R, KLG. Okay, Section L, which is education agency relations. That's LDAP.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just to bring everybody up to date, we have a policy book, and we subscribe to the New Hampshire School Board Association. Their legal department, based on newly enacted legislation, case law, et cetera, directs changes in these templates of school policy. That being said, as a school board, we do use this as a template, but we do have the ability to even tighten up or loosen any of the constraints that are in these policies. Believe it or not, I guarantee you that I read every single word, and I'm sure that's true of the rest of the members prior to the meeting. That being said, we have a first and a second, and I'm going to open it up for discussion and of the policies that Terry just mentioned. Would everybody please go to KBA, which is public right to know, public access to records, page 1 of 2. And please look at number 4. And I'm going to ask the business administrator. Essentially, it says that anyone requesting a copy of the public record will be charged 25 cents per copy unless there is an additional expense, etc. Not too far in the distant past, we had a right-to-know request from a citizen for 5,000 emails. Now, I'm sorry. Do you remember what the exact number of those emails were? No. No. Okay, thousands, absolutely thousands of emails. All they said was, it was blanket. We want every single email from this date to this date. We have to do that. That being said, okay, there's a conundrum. 25 cents a copy. Okay, somebody's writing a big check, and that stifles right to know in some cases. It could. On the other hand, if that became a 1 to 2 person job over a period of time to collate and then look at the email and redact children's names that are on there that you can't share with other people. So my concern is that this 25 cents per copy clause, right, may be fine if somebody says, I need the minutes from last meeting. No problem. We probably won't even charge the 25 cents. But on the other hand, when it takes a significant and inordinate amount of time, and sometimes when we have to outservice that, because the people who would normally do it still have a job to do, that presents an issue. So unless somebody has an answer and I don't, that is the reason I would like to table KBA and request a recommendation from the superintendent and the business manager of, given it's a specific case, what can we legitimately charge for the time? Okay?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is this boilerplate, the 25
KBA?
cent?
Yes.
Okay, because we used to be 10 cents a copy,
Great.
and then it went up to 25. So
We may need to put a maximum or look at time, but we'll work on a
Okay.
compromise.
Okay, so we're tabling.
Yes,
We're
KBA.
tabling KBA. Okay. I'm looking at KF, community use of school facilities, page 1 of 6. And I'm looking at number 4, and essentially this is a procedure for requesting use of the facilities here, depending upon whether your Alton Central School or your town of Alton or the rec department, etc. And it says here, police coverage shall be required if size of event, type of event, and time of day warrants coverage. And I would like to add that 4 words, as determined by the principal. We need somebody, to determine that. And then on number 5, in the event that notice of cancellation is received on the day of the planned activity, there'll be a charge of 2 hours of custodial time if overtime would have been required for the activity. Cancellations received prior to this time, it says, will require no charge. I'd like that to say may require no charge, because we really can't determine all the possible scenarios going forward.
How about,
I'm sorry.
For cancellations prior to this time, that fee may be waived.
It's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
Would
it's
you
fine.
prefer that? Because we can act on this if,
that's all right.
okay. The next page on 2 of 6,
So are you making a motion to amend this?
yes, I
Okay.
will.
At the end,
Yeah,
okay.
as long as we agree.
Yep.
As long as we all agree. On number 5, which is on 2 of 6, the next page, it just says putting up decorations of scenery that you can't use scotch tape, masking tape, thumbtacks, nails is prohibited. And please just add or screws. I hate to say, somebody screwed something and, well, it didn't say that. Okay?
Yep.
And then on number 6, it says scenery or other property will not be stored in the building without special permission from the building principal. I'd like it to say no property will be stored in the building without special permission of the building principal.
Okay.
Do you want to open that for discussion now, or do you
Sure.
want to wait?
I'd be happy to open it for
Which,
discussion.
I'm sorry, which number are you on?
Numbers 6. No or all property, no property will be stored in the building without permission.
All right. My only concern of that is if somebody was coming in on a Friday night to do something for a Saturday, could they possibly want to have scenery or property of theirs brought in?
Well, it says
What-
But it
without
does-
special permission.
It does say you can get permission
It
to
says,
do that.
Well,
it says
okay.
without special permission of the building principal. I just want anything that's stored to have the
Have to have the permission of the
principal.
principal? Okay.
I'm not saying we should stop that.
I thought you said no property will be stored, period.
Without permission of the principal,
But, okay, including that.
okay? And let me see here, on number 9, it says only gym shoes or sneakers will be permitted on gym floors when they are used for sports. For non-athletic events held in any school gym, it is up to the discretion of the school principal whether the floor will be covered. I'd like to add, any marks on the gym floor is the responsibility of the organization during the rental period, and a cleaning charge may be assessed if warranted.
Can we have yours if it passes?
Yeah. I'll read that again. It says here, for non-athletic events held in any school gym, it is up to the discretion of the school principal whether the floor will be covered.
Any marks?
And any marks on the gym floor are the responsibility of the organization during the rental period, and a cleaning charge may be assessed. I've seen what that floor looks like after some organizations have used it. None here, outside organization. Okay? Oh, and on number 13, the use of outdoor, let me see, bear with me. I would like to add it at the end. This says that you have to, you have to rake the field if you use it, essentially. You have to pick up the trash, things of that nature. And at the end, the deposit will not be returned until and unless all cleaning constraints have been met.
One more time, Steve.
Yeah. The deposit will not be returned until and unless all cleaning constraints have been met.
Okay.
On the same page, 3 of 6, number 3, is the responsibility of the group to pay for the policy fees when required by the district. I don't know if that's necessary or not.
Number 3. It does not, because this is a policy
Okay.
regarding the school.
Yep. And also, on the next page, 4 of 6, It talks about any person or organization using facilities, whether collecting admissions or not, shall furnish a certificate of insurance, etc. I would like to make sure that the certificate of insurance is generally $100,000, $300,000 with $1 million umbrella policy attached to it.
Okay, let's put that as minimum then, 300,000.
Yeah, 100,000, 300,000 for for
Yep.
liability.
Yep.
And then you need an umbrella policy is probably $100 or something like that. For $1 million, or
Okay,
else we have an open-ended liability.
so we'll put a minimum of. and
No,
that
to
would
get a $1 million umbrella policy, you generally have to have 100, 300,000.
Okay.
Okay, liability. But whatever our Primex, whatever our insurance company says, if it's a different number, that's fine too. Okay, next page, 6 of 6. What I don't see in there is an an audio-visual aid and a dollar amount. Is that needed to determine if we have to supply an audio-visual person?
Chris, how does it typically work if someone comes in and wants AV set up?
I'm just thinking back over the last year here, and it had happened a couple of times to the extent that we pulled down the big screen over the stage. It happened recently that we supplied the projector that ran it. It was set up by a tech team person that I introduced you to earlier. There has been one time that I know of that Mr. Nickerson would have gone and helped. The custodial staff can do the big white screen over the stage. I think it's reasonable to put in some sort of a user fee,
Yeah.
especially because if something goes wrong.
We want to run our own AV equipment, don't we?
It
Don't
will-
we?
Yes and no.
No?
I'm more
Okay.
concerned that if we need our people to help you do something, we want to make sure
Okay.
that there is a fee attached in this chart. I think that would be a good addition.
We leave that to the principal.
Well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, really.
no, I think it is, because here we talk about lighting technician. That's a
Mhm.
little bit left over from when we did have lighting and it was a K-12 and we did that type of thing here.
Mhm.
But the model is there for that to be the modern version of what is considered AV and tech material.
So why don't we just add to that lighting technician / AV technician?
I think
Okay.
It's
we
going to be
should.
the same hourly master rate.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm. It's a good point.
I think I only have one more. KFA,
Can I just ask
Oh,
something
sure.
of Chris on this one?
yeah.
Do you see anything with this, because you're the one that has to work with this policy?
Well, when I glanced at it earlier, I feel remiss, I didn't think of the AV in the same light that Steve did, so I'm glad that that's added. That would be my only addition at this point.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
KFA, which is public conduct on school property, the very first sentence. The board encourages the prosecution of any person who commits assault, battery, or assault and battery upon the person of a school employee or student, or threatens and places an employee or student of the public schools in immediate fear of bodily harm while the employee or student is in the performance of his duties as a school or student. I would like to add on the first line, the board encourages the prosecution of any person who commits assault and battery okay, I'm going to put it in a different place. I'm going to read it again. The board encourages the prosecution of any person who commits assault, battery, or assault and battery, or sexual harassment upon the person of a school employee, a student, etc. The reason being, in the state of New Hampshire, the sexual harassment now can now be determined to be a felony. It is certainly a class 1 misdemeanor as well. So we would encourage that type of persecution, just like any other assault.
Prosecution.
We do have
Prosecution.
a policy on that,
We do,
on sexual
do.
harassment.
Okay.
yes.
Is that so?
That's fine.
Okay.
You can leave that. We have a
I
policy
would
as well.
just add sexual harassment,
That's fine.
and I think that's what I have, and I would request if somebody would second that as amended.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
I have one more.
Okay,
KCD Computers,
KCD?
KCD.
Got it?
We are still looking at the requirements for minimum level of acceptance for donated materials. Because this was more or less a boilerplate, we put it out to tech and just waiting for a response back on what do we really want to accept for donated materials. And I want to make sure that our tech people say, yes, this is the level, and it's not just going to be a doorstop. So if we can put this one on hold till next time, and we'll do it as a
What's the
first.
number?
It is KCD Computers.
KCD.
I make a motion that we table KCD.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Okay, can you do the second reading and adoption
Yep.
of J?
Okay, the second reading is Section J, which is students, which is JLCD, which is the administration of medication, and JLCDR, which is health office procedure. That's the only ones for second reading.
We made a change in there by adding designated adult.
That's correct. That was the change.
That was a change. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
And did you go through the rescinds yet?
No.
Okay.
Okay, rescind is Section J, which is JIC, J-R, which is the handling of unauthorized communication devices, and Section K, KF-E, which is application for use of building form. These are to be rescinded.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Is there a discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passed. Okay. Next, we're going to move to presentations.
Wonderful.
And I'd like to turn this over to Superintendent Stiles.
Excellent. It is our pleasure this evening to bring you 3 different presentations that have been worked on very diligently and very carefully by staff, administration, members of the community. We appreciate their input and the time that it has taken to really research out a number of very important topics. We're going to start tonight with our preschool committee that has been meeting since this summer. And we were charged with bringing forward a recommendation to the board for preschool for Alton and what that's going to look like going forward. The committee did some exceptional work with researching, with reaching out to other communities, to finding out what is out there and what is a best practice. So I am, let me introduce the members of the committee, and then we will present to you. So you know Joan Reese, and she is our preschool teacher. Jen Katzmorin, special ed. Andrea Parker, community member, parent. You know Connie Racine, welcome. And I see Carol back there. Nice to have you. I'm glad you could be here tonight. Is there anybody sitting next to you, Carol? Okay. We also had, Terry was our board representative, Anna Ransom, and Marjorie O'Toole was also a member of the committee. So we will jump right in. We're going to have to just slide the little window up there.
This is just a little housekeeping. Right after the presentation, we'll just have an opening question and answer period from anybody who's sitting out there, quite frankly.
Yeah. Ethan, could I ask you to turn the lights off just over us? I think it's the closest. Thank you. So the charge of our committee was to make recommendations to the board regarding the variations to the preschool program that we may want to make, what those possible variations were, if there would be any cost to parents, and the ages of the students going forward. And those were the real focus of the discussions that we had going forward. So to start the look at this, we've done some research on preschool education. I'll turn it to Joan. Should she use this maybe?
No, there's a mic right here.
Why don't you use the mic right there, Joan?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Our first charge was to first define what is preschool. And after a lot of research and discussion, we came up with preschool is an early childhood program in which children combine learning with play in a program run by professionally trained adults. Children are most commonly enrolled in preschool between the ages of 3 and 5, though there are those as young as 2. And the emphasis on preschool is learning and development. So then we needed to define the difference between an early childhood classroom and or preschool classroom and a special education preschool classroom. So the early childhood program is defined as having at least 50% of the children without IEPs. This would include such programs as a Head Start program, a public kindergarten program, preschool programs in a public school system like ours, private kindergarten and preschools, family child care, and child care centers. It does not require that a special education program approval, but there are early learning standards that we've been following since 2005 that New Hampshire has put in place. So we do have those. Alton is an early childhood program. The difference between an early childhood program and a special education program would be that less than 50% of the children have no IEP. So there are more children with identified needs in the program. And this may include classrooms in a regular school building, in trailers, portables, but part of a regular school program. And it requires approval from the state. So then we wanted to decide what makes an effective, high-quality early education program. And we found that it has a language-rich environment. It has warm and responsive adult-child interactions. The staff is qualified and stable. There is small group size and high adult-child ratios. There's a developmentally appropriate intentional curricula in place, and it's safe and regulated. It's a very safe environment. And then we wanted to know if preschool was important and why it's important. And what we found was that in the first 5 years, it is when children's brains are forming at the highest rate. So 700 synapses are formed every second in early childhood. And then after the first 5 years, it's really important because their vision is formed, their hearing is formed, their language development is formed. It's the foundation of all learning. Their cognitive functioning is also formed. And so after those first 5 years, it's harder to get some of those early skills in. We wanted to know if preschool made a difference in the long term. And what we found, there were 123 studies that were reviewed. Well, we didn't review them. We reviewed the review of them. And we found that despite there is some studies that show a slight decline in the effects of children as they enter into school, but on the average, these effects, the positive effects, do not disappear, and they remain substantial. Cognitive gains from preschool programs were larger when programs focused on intentionality and individualized teaching and small group learning. And the long-term effects included gains in achievement in social emotional development, less grade repetition in special education, and increased high school graduation. So the bottom line was that preschool does produce substantial long-term gains, especially when it's done well. Thank you.
So Joan gave some general background about the program that we have here, but it's important to note that there's no requirement for preschool in New Hampshire. And so the only thing that there are for preschools in New Hampshire are the guidelines put out by the Department of Health and Human Services, not even the Department of Education. The recommendations or the guidelines come from early childhood research, from mainly coming out of Head Start and the work that goes into those programs. The difference is that we are mandated through the DOE to provide special education to those students who have the need for special education. There's a continuum of placements or schools that we could place students with disabilities in. And this just shows right out of our rules and regulations the range of different settings that students with needs can be placed into. It's important to identify the needs first before deciding on a placement, and that goes for any student identified with any type of disability. So the other thing that I primarily am mandated to is to make sure that we're placing students in the least restrictive environment. So that means as close to a regular classroom as possible. And that's where the peer part, the typical peer models, come into play. So there are 4 major considerations that a special education team has to consider, not just for preschoolers, but for any student. But in this case, for preschoolers, it has to have no cost to the parents. It has to be in the least restrictive environment. It has to be based on the student's IEP. So that means that we can't make a placement before an educational plan is in place, because it's solely based on the needs of the little kiddos. And then we have to have staff who are working with the students have the appropriate credentials from the Department of Education. So now when we look at what we have had in Alton, over the past 8 years, our model, our program has changed 3 times. Our average number of identified students is 7 per year. We've had a low of 4 and as many as 9, which was just in the 14-15 school year. The other thing is that through our child find process, which we're mandated to have to make sure that we're meeting the needs of anybody who might have a disability, we've had as little as 7 students come through to just be screened, that's not identified, and as high as 13, and that was just, and as high as 20 that were just last spring. These are the enrollment numbers over the past almost 10 years. Actually, it is 10 years. And then you can see we've filled the spots that are available. We've always hovered around 9 to 13 students, with that one exception of the first year in this graph where there was a high of 17 in that classroom. Currently, right now, we have 3 sessions with 13, 13, and 9. So again, very consistent with the numbers that you see up here. So we did a lot of research looking at what other districts in the state are providing. This slide breaks down the 3 closest towns to us. As you can see, they all offer, well, 2 of them offer early childhood programs. They do pay, they do have a fee associated, New Durham does. Barnstead does not have a charge for their typical peers, but they choose their peers under certain criteria. So I think that's where the difference is. And then Guilford and Gilmington do not have a preschool program within their current school system, and they pay for basically an out-of-district placement for those students. So then when you look at more districts, not just our surrounding communities, basically we got responses from 35 different districts, and I have a massive spreadsheet if you're really interested in looking at it. But basically 8 have no program within their districts, which I found that to be interesting. 2 are only special education, meaning they don't have typical peers for their students to be engaged with. 1 is a Title I program, and 24, the majority, are programs just like we have here. 22 of the 35 are charging And you can see based on the areas in the state, the low to the high ranges of what they're charging per day. So it's approximately about $8.75 per day that other districts are charging for their students. Only 8 districts reported on how they actually select their typical peers. 3 are first come, first served, 2 do a lottery, and 3 are by that special selection or criteria, and those are decided by their own individual teams. And around the country, if we go more globally, we have 4 states that do mandate preschool. You can see that it's mainly for at-risk 4-year-olds. 3-year-olds with special needs do have participation in West Virginia, and the class sizes you can see are much higher. So it just kind of goes from the micro level of Alton all the way out to what's happening in the rest of the country. So what we wanted to do is talk a little bit about the benefit of having a preschool program housed within our building versus going out to private preschool programs in our local community. Basically, the cost breakdowns per student you can see is almost double if we were to send our students to local preschools in our community. It is more cost effective for us to educate our students with identified needs here within the building as we've done.
So based on all of the research, all of the discussions, the committee met several times. What the committee finally decided was that, yes, indeed, we should offer universal access for all 3- and 4-year-olds to preschool with a priority to 4-year-olds. A wait list would be created if enrollment exceeded 50 students. We would stay with the September 30th birth date to determine eligibility. No cost to parents of any child. We recommend that you offer 4 sessions to accommodate up to 60 children with a ratio of 2 to 15. And if student numbers do not warrant 4 sessions, the preschool teacher will be assigned tutorial duties at other grade levels. And the reason for that recommendation is to maintain consistency of staffing. Have a number of designated spots for identified children determined by special education director. One of the changes that was recommended was to go from 3 hours to 2.5 hours for each session, 4 days a week, so Wednesday would not have students with mixed, and there would be mixed ages for every session. There was some research done on the birth rate information in Alton. If you look on the right-hand box there, for 16-17 enrollment, it was 46 was the projection, but there are 36 in attendance. 42 for 17-18, 41 18-19, and 40 for 19-20. So it's pretty consistently across the board. What's a benefit at this point with our recommendations is there's no budgetary impact. So currently in the budget includes 2 full-time teachers and paras. No new classroom setup costs would be needed. Bathroom upgrades are being addressed through a building savings fund, and we don't need additional space with our recommendations. So costs from the current budget would be applied to the 17-18 budget, so there'd be no request for additional staff or materials.
Thanks.
So in summing it up, the research did convince us as committee members that there is a benefit educationally, academically, socially for having our youngest emerging children in a preschool program. That the studies showed that there was a lasting effect of that, and by opening it up to all of our students and giving them access, that it was in the benefit of Alton children to offer that. So that is the recommendation of the committee, and we bring it forward for your discussion.
What I'd like to do at this time is, I'd like to open it up to questions from the floor first. And if you would direct your question to the superintendent, and if you would like to direct it elsewhere, that'd be absolutely fine. But we're not going to go with a sign-in sheet or anything like that. So does anybody have any questions or concerns they'd like to talk about? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to open it to the board then. Does the board have any questions or concerns concerning the pre-K program?
I guess, I have a question. I don't know how many times
Could you open, can I bother you to open the lights again, please?
Oh, sure.
Grab the lights. Thanks.
My question is, I would like to know how many times you met, and I guess my biggest question is was there any information that you gathered surprising, or was there something that really kind of blew you away as being different than what you might have thought going into this?
For me personally, I can say for me, I've been doing education for, 4 decades. So I don't know that there was anything really surprising there.
Right.
Early learning is a tremendous benefit when the program is done well. And I think you can say that with anything in education, if it's done well. I mean, we have an exemplary preschool program here because we have exemplary staff. So if the program is done well, it's a real advantage. I think what was most striking was the breakdown of cost, of really taking a look at what is the benefit for keeping our children in their neighborhood school. Not only is the cost half, but I think most importantly is this bottom line that says we take that $328,000, it's not divided by 7 students, it's divided by 38 students who have that rich advantage of getting early childhood education. So for me, I think that this was most striking in really putting out there and defining what the costs and the advantages are. But I'll certainly open it up to our, and Anna, welcome. I'll open it up to our committee to say anything that struck you as well. And Anna was a member of our committee too.
I apologize for being late. That was the most striking thing that occurred to me. In fact, I sat in the meeting and I looked at Jen and said, what is the cost to tuition a kid out? 10 grand? And she laughed at me. And said the number is much higher. And really for me, when we got to this slide, I kind of said, well, if you take that math out and look at what the cost is for this average of 7 kids, that's a significant cost to our district. The other thing that struck me as interesting was there's actually, you can look online, there's a report card for preschool programs across the country. And there was some pretty compelling information in there from my perspective. One of which was I've always appreciated our smaller class sizes. So you can check with Joan, I was very much against doing anything to increase class sizes. But when you look at what the average is, that 15 number that we landed on really is kind of the average across the country for what states offer. So it gives you a little bit of perspective there too.
Great, thank you.
I have a thought, a couple of thoughts. I believe that, this is just my opinion, I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just speaking for Steve Miller. I believe we owe our children the best possible education by credentialed, talented people. I believe it's a significant benefit to put kids with IEPs together with kids who don't have IEPs as one homogeneous group. I think that's important. I do know that there's a significant concern. I've been on enough budget committees and zoning boards and things like that to know that how this affects other businesses in town, such as daycares, private businesses. That being said, our charge as a school board is to take care of our kids. I hope we can do that with no harm to anybody else. But on the other hand, the most important thing is to take care of the kids first. I believe as long as we can afford it, and as long as Alton, who has historically been very generous with education dollars in terms of educating our kids, this is something that, you know, we should support. A sidebar factor that is a benefit is that Alton, by doing this and other things, not just this in a vacuum, but doing other things as well that we'll share with you, is that Alton can be synonymous with a good education in not just the Lakes region, but in the state. And it could be a driving factor to bring people into this town who want to share our values. And right now I can tell you that the values of the town are quality education for our kids. It doesn't mean it's just for the elementary school, but also for the middle school and also the high school as well. And there are areas where that's being currently addressed. So if we want to drive people to think about Alton as, you know, we're probably moving to the Lakes region, but boy, where can we go and make sure our kids have a good education? The first thing they think of has to be Alton. And if it isn't Alton, it's somebody else, then we're doing something wrong, and we should be replicating what that town is doing. So I will, even though it's expensive, it is by every measure a reasonable cost, and it's something that I would wholeheartedly support. Cal?
I appreciate what you just said, Steve. I just want to dispel the myth about local daycare, because my daughter pays for daycare, and she pays for a full day of daycare, and that person brings her son to the preschool every day, but she pays a full day to that daycare. So they do not deduct the cost of that couple hours because she brings him and picks him up. So therefore, I think that when people wonder if it's going to affect our local daycare, if you have working parents, it's not. They still have to pay for the daycare. They have to ask that person to put themselves out to bring the children and pick them up. It's rare to find that person, so when you do, that's a bonus in itself. And sometimes people just can't swing it because of the transportation. So I just wanted to kind of dispel that idea that we would be affecting local businesses. I truly don't think we would.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Can I just add?
Yes, sure.
There are 9 children in our program right now, in our morning sessions, that go to Joyful Footsteps, and their parents pay full day for it. And we're just very lucky that we have a nice relationship with that. They come right to our school, and they pick up the kids, and they bring them back to the child care. So they are still having
I mean, I agree with everything Steve said. My only concern is the legal advice. We did get some legal advice over the winter, and I just would want to make sure that we are, whatever we're doing would be within the guidelines of what we should be doing.
And I'll share with the board, there is not a need to put this on a warrant if you choose not to, because it falls within the scope of our educational mission. If we were to open it up and not cap it as we have, then we could potentially be committing future dollars, and we would have to have a warrant then. But because the committee's recommendation is to cap it at 60, and to then have a waiting list, we are not obligating funds for the future. We are holding it firm. So Matt is away in Texas. He is going to get me some language for a warrant should you choose to do something like a non-binding resolution or go that route. But we do not have to have a warrant article. But I will bring language forward in the November meeting.
And Peter, we met 4 times, but I know all of the committee members did a ton of time outside of those 4 meeting times, just to answer your question from before.
Are there any concerns from the administration taking a look at the recommendation from the committee that are open for discussion?
I think it was well-researched, well thought out. We had, we had the experts sitting at the table. We had input from parents. I think we had some good lively discussions. It was certainly not all of us sitting there nodding our heads. We had some very good, honest, open discussions. And I think out of those discussions came a very solid, well thought out, forward-thinking proposal to give to the board.
On behalf of the board, I want to thank the committee for all their hard work, because I've been on this, and it is hard work. Don't let anybody tell you different. And that being said, I make a motion that we approve and follow through with the committee's recommendation in total as delivered to the board today.
I'll second
second.
that. Well, I was on the committee, so.
I know.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
You have a charge to go forward to, Lieutenant. Thank you.
Well done.
We have gifted and talented STEM and enrichment presentation. I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. As our year started, we had quite the charge in bringing forward a look at how we were going to be providing enrichment services to our students here. And we are very fortunate that we have quite a dedicated and talented team that is providing and helping to craft a vision that casts quite a broad net and opening it up, and it's very exciting. So we have some information to present to the board this evening about what the program currently looks like in its, I will say in its infancy, because we had a foundation and we are moving on in that foundation. And we have all of the stakeholder members of the committee, the educators, who are here as part of that. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris. I know she's already kind of done introductions, but it's a very hardworking, dedicated group, and we've had some, we meet weekly. So it's a great group to work with. But Chris, why don't you do the intros?
Sure. The next slide then. To anticipate your question, Peter, I would like to say that we do meet every Tuesday, 10:45 till 12:30, and that's been going on since about the second week of September. And that's a static group. It's a committed time, and we're all there. The only variable might be Derek and Mike Major flip-flopping a little bit, since there is a conflict in the schedule for when they can both be available the whole time. But Denise puts out an agenda for us, so everybody had some kind of, I'm going to call it homework or some kind of research or something to bring to the next meeting. So Derek usually comes first, and then when he's given his, he goes and Mike comes and gives his input. So that's the only thing that's not perfectly static in this. Also, I did introduce you to everybody, but I'd like you to take a moment and really realize that what this committee represents is teachers in all kind of different phases of careers, teachers from different backgrounds. Like I said, Mr. McDuff is a second career teacher coming to us from Raytheon. We have Denise, who's been here at Alton for the cultural memory piece for a long time and having taught in lower elementary grades as well as middle school grades. So there's a very broad spectrum here of who was even on this committee. That said, I think that everybody's background and PD was interesting, that brought them to this. It's almost like a self-selection kind of a thing that got people here. But also do notice we have a standout here would be Mike Major and Derek, because they are listed here as being middle school teachers, but both of them have something to do with STEM in other grade levels. So they're familiar and working closely with teachers in lower grades and in the intermediate grades. So the spectrum here is multifaceted, but with everybody working from a real strength and a real power of their convictions. So that's what I'd like to say about introducing the group of people, and say that it's a really great part of the week to look forward to, knowing that amid all the other things that a principal does, I get to go and sit with these people in a static time, and I really look forward to each meeting. Denise is the first curriculum director, with part of her job duty and her job description being to oversee the gifted and talented program.
Good evening. I just want to start this evening by reviewing our mission statement for Alton, and that's that we ensure our students learn and apply the knowledge and skills essential to become critical thinkers and contributing citizens. And so that brings us to our purpose. As teachers and as the enrichment committee, we want to meet the needs of individual students, not just specific students, but all students. We want to foster their intrinsic motivation and commitment to learning and inspire and empower them as students. And we do this by finding topics of interest and really zoning in and giving them that individualized learning that they need, find their target areas, and develop our curriculum around their specific needs. We provide that differentiation of instruction and expectations. While all children have our competencies for their grade levels, some are working at different levels. Some are high, some are right on grade level, and some are lower. All students can work on those specific skills at their level, and hopefully we pull them up in their growth doing that. And we cultivate leaders and we prepare our students for careers that don't even exist yet. Because the students in first grade today, as you know, the future is changing and we need to meet their needs as it comes. So a few years ago, ACS gave out a technology questionnaire. And one of the questions given to parents was, besides having strong subject matter knowledge, which of the following skills do you think are most important for your child to learn to be successful in the future? And the 5 top answers were the ability to learn new skills independently, be creative and think outside the box, critical thinking and problem solving, effective communication skills, both written and verbal, and leadership skills. Carol Tomlinson, who is a leader in education right now, gives us this quote: "Excellence in education is when we do everything that we can to make sure that they become everything they can." And moving forward, I'm going to introduce Carol Foley, our district talented teacher.
Thank you. So the value of enrichment is something that we're here as a committee to talk about, and I'm talking specifically about the next couple of slides, but we could really have invited all of the staff here to be with us, because the teachers are doing it in their own classrooms. They are providing enrichment beyond the standard curriculum. I won't read all of these things to you because you can do that on your own, but basically what we're looking at is that we're changing the depth and the breadth of what we're giving students in their curriculum. Just for myself, when I think about what I may be thinking of in doing enrichment for students, is giving them some of the skills that they may not get in the regular classroom. Something that may be a water-related theme for this year, because we had 2 of our grades of Quest students go to attend an Ocean Discovery Day. And from that water-related theme, they can learn many things that are going to be expanding into their areas of interest, no matter what they may be. It does not have to be specifically related to water, but that would be the vehicle that they're learning about it. We may be doing some things with geographical information systems and mapping, and that's something of the future. And those students will be able to teach us adults something about that. They're going to find out their own learning styles as we go through some of the ways that they can learn what they're already good at and learn how to improve what they aren't quite as strong at. Next slide, please. One of the things that we look at is trying to make the real-life connections happen. And I think that through that, we can have students be working with citizen science projects. There's a lot of things just in the state of New Hampshire that we could be specifically involved in. One of my favorites has to do with Winter Severity Index, and students working in weather-related activities in general curriculum can learn how to integrate the weather into figuring out what the white-tailed deer population is and how much hunting season should be determined for the following year. So we would actually be turning data in to New Hampshire Fish and Game Department to be a part of that. Students would also have a chance to make other connections and because of that, their achievement level is going to be increased. A lot of what students would be doing with this would be looking at data that then, when they're doing SBAC testing or smarter balanced testing, that they would already have experiences in comparing data and being able to extrapolate information from that. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides, 4 to be exact, I really want you to focus on the purple text in here, because that's showing the important words that we're looking at. This would be the depth of knowledge 1. You notice the steps down at the bottom. All of the purple words have to do with a passive word when it ends in ing, such as reading, listening, watching, participating, completing, taking, all of those ing words. So this is considered depth of knowledge 1. And if you're unfamiliar with depth of knowledge, it's going to have to do with recall and reproduction of facts that they learn. And in Bloom's taxonomy, this is going to be the knowing and remembering stages, and that the kids can learn how to comprehend and understand. It's the lowest level of the 4 levels of depth of knowledge. The second depth of knowledge on traditional classroom, again, is going to be the skill and concept level, how to do things. It's giving them a little bit more information. It's going to have 2 or more steps in order to get to that skill or concept. And quite a few in the regular classroom. This happens on a regular basis. 1 and 2 are, bless you, are happening on a regular basis. The depth of knowledge 3 is going to be one that's going to get much higher. It's going to be involved with strategic thinking. The words are going to be getting much deeper. It's a richer vocabulary, and one of the important ones is the first one, setting personal goals for content and 21st century skills. If you're not aware of what 21st century skills are, they encompass many topics, but it would be on critical thinking, problem solving, doing research skills. That's a huge thing, as shown in number 3. Persevering, the ability to persevere, communication of all sorts, and leadership. Those are big parts of the depth of knowledge 3, in addition to ICT technology things with the scientific method, and environmental literacy and wellness. All of those are going to be part of the personalized classroom. And we go to depth of knowledge 4. And this would be when we have extended thinking and able to synthesize and evaluate what we know as we're collecting and interpreting that data. This is where we'd get into learning about students learning about their own personal learning styles and self-knowledge. So all of these would be part of a regular classroom. It would be nice to have them, but what isn't happening in the regular classroom, we can bring it in as specialists that are working with each and every student in the school.
Hello, I'm David Miller, Information Specialist, Media Director. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideas of personalization or differentiation. I think they're kind of the main, along with what Carol said, they're the main focus, kind of, in my view, of our slideshow. Because they talk all of our slides talk about our kids, but when we think about our classrooms in general, in my view, this is where I guess my soul is when I think about education. So I'd like you to imagine, just for a few minutes, you're in a doctor's office, and what does personalization mean in that office to you as a patient? Or how about differentiated service? Flip that around, and what does that mean to the nurse or the doctor? Just think about that for a second. So, do you think we can apply those terms, differentiation and personalization, to all interpersonal conversations or interrelations, or are they just in the doctor's office in a professional setting? How about in a classroom? And my view is, in a classroom, they're the main component of a classroom. So, let's see, stick to my script here. If the students are the workers and the teachers are the coaches, then the philosophy behind personalization and differentiation, particularly from an instruction standpoint, will form the foundation of all the learning tasks that go on in a classroom. In fact, they are one concept for this. They are one concept for the sake of our presentation, but I think in general too. I mean, when I think of my kids in my room, I know each one of them, or try to know each one of them, not just their name, but what's going on, how they behave around each other, how they behave around me, what they focus on. So it's basically know your students, so you can kind of focus what's going on in your classroom for your kids. So if the goal is to help all our students learn how to use their minds well, then differentiation is the process in which we teach or coach our students. So I'll give you a moment to read this one. So you can see that there's a lot of student-initiated work going on here. So something to remember is that all our curricular goals apply to all students. So they're kind of like a road trip. You can get to the end destination by taking many different routes, right? Or maybe it's a basketball coach who has to work on free throws with their kids. That's the example I use on the next slide. So the best way, so let's go on to the next slide. And I think if you look at my basketball example, so I'm a coach of sixth graders, got a small team, and then I got two kids who can make 8 of 10 free throws all the time. Doesn't matter where we are, in the gym practicing it or on the court in front of 1,000 fans. And I got one guy who can make 10 of 10, or girl, can make 10 of 10 in practice and then get in the pressure situation and only makes 3 of 10. Then I have two people who, no matter what, they make 5 of 10, no matter where we're at. And then one poor guy or girl just shoots air balls all the time. So how do I, as a coach, improve their skills? We can do what I did, or what my coaches did in school, which was, okay, everybody go out there and shoot 25 free throws before practice as a warm-up, then run your laps, and then we're going to run practice, and then at the end of the day, end of the practice, cool down, we're going to shoot 25 more. So everybody shot 50 free throws for practice, and spin, repeat, we're all going to get better. Or do I really want to concentrate on making my team better at free throws? So I'm going to, what are some of the ideas that I may have, or lesson plans that I may have for each kid individually? So my 8 of 10 students, I could have maybe pair up and have a contest between them. Maybe because they're shooting 80%, maybe they need to work with the kids who shoot 30% in a game or whatever. The 5 of 10 kids, do I have them go break down some film and decide, oh yeah, see, I approach the line a different way each time. I shoot the ball left-handed one time, right-handed another time. How am I going to fix that? The kid who shoots air balls, maybe I need them to do some push-ups each practice, something like that. Oh, and my favorite example was me, that 10 of 10 kid. My coach figured out that in the pressure situations, to listen to the crowd. So he finally had somebody stand next to me and yell at me for a little while so that I could deal with the fact that somebody was standing right next to me the whole time. That's why I use that example. Let's see. So it's real easy to design those kind of lessons for a physical activity, if you think about it, as a coach, you know. But what do we do in the classroom, where we're working on having our kids develop their mind skills, you know. Really can't see all the time what they're thinking, obviously. So there are still some skills and drills that we have to keep in the classroom, so I'm not saying that we're going to drop everything and then focus on the 25 people in here individually, but you still do have to kind of focus on those things. And so these, if you look at my last slide, if we were to shuffle these around, you would eventually see, I think, Bloom's taxonomy on a continuum. And I'll give you an example of my pen. It's an information tool, one of the oldest ones, like a pencil. But does it contain any information? It's up here in my head, right? So I'm going to use it to produce something. Same could be kind of said of a computer. It holds information, but does anything come out of it unless I use it and use the skills and the information that my classroom, instructors, my coaches, my peers have helped me develop. So from a school standpoint, in general, just as a global issue, we're trying to look at our kids and find their strengths and weaknesses and maximize the strengths and bring up the weaknesses from an individual standpoint. I think where it came from way back in the day was it came out of special education, if you think about it, because that's what was going on in those rooms, and then it was applied to the traditional classrooms a little later on. So going back to my things there, the flipped classroom would be the top of Bloom's taxonomy, and that's where the kids actually use all the things that we talked about previously to kind of lead instruction. So our coach, our teacher, doesn't give over full control of the room, obviously, but most of the time, kids are doing the instruction. They're doing the learning, and then they're conveying it to their kids. If you think about that, that's the ultimate use of information. I mean, that's how we, in our professional lives, are great. Can we do the task that our boss, we get applied to ourselves? So that's kind of, in my view, where we're trying to take our kids, is to the point where in a classroom, they can be assigned a specific task, take it to the nth degree, or maybe, and of course I didn't talk about motivation there earlier, but one of the best motivators is write your own question about a subject of interest or of this topic, because obviously you can't take away the curricular goals that we have in general. So you know, okay, how can we make 2 + 2 more interesting to you? So what are some questions you have about 2 + 2? Whatever you want to do. All right, and so it says on my script that I now turn it over to Denise. Denise, your turn.
Okay. So this all brings us to our plan. What is our plan? Our plan is to not take away any services, but to add more and to bring more depth to all of our students. So while we are moving towards more push-in and bringing enrichment into the classrooms, we want to support our teachers by continuing our pull-out services for the children who have already been receiving them in the past. So for grades 3, 4, and 5 this year, Carol is pulling them out once or twice a week to do small group activities with those students who previously received those services. But at the same time, she is also going into the classroom once or twice a week with each grade level, K through 5, and working with enrichment lessons with the teachers. We're also providing STEM classes for grades 3 through 6 with our STEM teachers. We're giving professional development opportunities to all of our teachers, which include real-world, authentic learning opportunities, conferences, book talks, school observations, talking with other colleagues. I just went to a conference down in Massachusetts on Friday where I met some incredible colleagues for the New England Association of Teachers of English. And I would love to have some of our teachers visit those schools if possible. They just offered fabulous, fabulous writing opportunities with authentic learning that I loved. And I will bring them here. I'm going to try them in my own classroom and share them with our colleagues, but I would love to get our teachers down there to see what's being done. And our enrichment staff are modeling for our classroom teachers every day. They're going into the classrooms. Mr. McDuff has been doing his best to get into the 4th grade and the 3rd grade classrooms and to really work with them on a regular basis. He's also been doing some co-teaching with our Spanish teacher with the 3rd grade, and they're making kites. Mr. Major, I forget, you're in grade 4 also, correct? 4 and 5. And Mr. Miller has also been working with other grade levels. As often as they can, when their schedules allow, they're visiting other grades, getting to know the children, and working with the teachers. And we're also doing our regular assessments, which have been planned. We have a year-long assessment schedule, which includes our NWEA assessments. We just finished our fall. We'll do a winter benchmark in the spring, and we also have the Smarter Balanced. Next year, we will still have our enrichment K-5 scheduled once a week. We will still have our STEM classes. Grades 3 and 4 will have the gifted and talented pull out next year. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong slide. But so far this year, already this year, we have had the enrichment classes, we've had the STEM classes. Our G&T pullouts have gone on the UNH Ocean Discovery field trip. We had our theme day, Make Your Own Ball Day, which was an incredible day. Everyone in the school had smiles on their faces, and the kids just enjoyed it. We've got our one-to-one technology. Students are using their Chromebooks every day in classes. They're starting to understand how that use is responsible. We've given them certain websites that they can use for enrichment purposes. We're teaching them how to keyboard, how to use them for research, how to do searches. Our committee is meeting once a week with the superintendent, looking at the needs, planning more PD for the rest of the teachers. Our STEM enrichment teachers are already working in the classrooms. We have after-school enrichment. We have students in clubs. And we're having a November family night coming up. And already we have our fall assessments done. So all of that has happened in just a short 2 months of school. So from 17 and 18, we want to increase the use and the scope of our resources and technology. We're using data to drive our decisions, and not just the assessment data. We're using teacher observations, parent input, classroom projects, anything that we can to find and target those weaknesses to bring that instruction and fine-tune it. We want to use consistent project-based learning. We really are encouraging teachers to go out and find authentic learning. We have a subscription to a project-based learning website that has a catalog of all kinds of projects already done, and they can direct it to their competencies that they're working on. We're going to continue our professional development with differentiation, and we'd like to create a teacher, student, parent resource webpage where everybody can have one source to go to work together and share ideas. We're going to continue our modeling of team teaching, and we're going to work on community mentorships, having people from the community come in to work with our students to extend their learning that way. And then in the 18-19, we're going to bring in professional development from in-house experts. By that time, over 3 years, we hope to have our teachers being able to present to their colleagues here and help them share their skills. We'll be using our project-based learning on a regular basis. We want personalization. We continue to use that data to drive our decision-making, to hone in and really bring our curriculum higher. We'll offer parent workshops that are topic-based and continue with our community mentorships. Our job here is really to focus on the children and the student needs, and to bring those needs to what do they need. We have that win period that we use every day, the what I need. So we look at the children and we talk to them, and we look at their assessments, we look at their classwork, and we help them to drive their own instruction and help them make choices that's going to want them to learn more.
Hi, I'm Richard McDuff, and I am currently the 3 to 8 tech ed teacher. I'm just here this evening to tell the board a little bit about the wide range of the enrichment opportunities and some of the benefits that they are currently bringing to our students. The National Junior Honor Society is encouraging leadership skills and service to people outside of the school building. We have Voice, which is a student-led organization that promotes a positive change in the school environment. Destination Imagination, which bolsters teamwork, creativity, and critical thinking skills. This fall's clubs and some of the after-school sessions include cooking, martial arts, cartography, coloring, and drama. FLL, First Lego League, and Tetrix, which is kind of the next step from that, will be starting soon. Both of these programs involve students designing and building problem-solving robots. Both of these activities are kind of a stepping stone towards Prospect Mountain's robotics program that they do so well with up there. Alton Central also has a wonderful art and music program that encourages creativity, discipline, and self-esteem. And there's the summer programs that have a STEM focus, along with what was mentioned earlier with the student-initiated projects. All of these help develop confidence and skill sets and problem-solving capabilities. Thank you.
I'm Derek Papasino, and only one more person to go, everyone. That was a long night. So the following questions are what teachers use to drive meaningful, strong instruction. If you look at the bottom, these were created by Rick DeFore. He was a teacher, principal, superintendent, and now an educational consultant with over 30 years of experience. So, I mean, you can help you read these yourselves. But when I look at these questions, I think, our relearning with a purpose. We need to start shifting from doing assignments to knowing objectives. I think a lot of kids, I need to do this, I need to do this, but what is the objective that we want you to know at the end of that lesson or unit? We need to start giving students second opportunities or another chance to succeed at something. I think we're in an environment where failure is seen as a bad thing, and we need to breathe this atmosphere where we're going to learn from our failures, and we're going to have more opportunities. And lastly, we need to start inspiring our students and challenging them. I know a lot of us sometimes feel and students feel that extra work is punishment. So not just giving kids extra work, but inspiring them to seek the answers to the questions that they have. And lastly, this pyramid does a nice job sort of wrapping up, I think, everything that we've seen in the previous 22 slides. If you start at the bottom of this pyramid, I guess I want you to focus on the bold words here. The bottom, offered to all students, building-wide. I've been in this town now for almost 13 years as a teacher, and I talk about, when I talk to people at Alton, I tell them all the programs that we offer, and it's amazing. They're amazed. I have family in Connecticut, and I tell them what we offer to every student, and it's amazing what we can do here. If you work your way up, obviously you can see the more individualized opportunities that we have for students. For example, I teach 7th grade life science. I also have grade 5 and 6 STEM. So all the students are going to come to me for life science. However, I also have the opportunity to work with our life skills kids who can come down to me. I can pull our Spanish teacher in, and we can do just so many enriching opportunities. Our learning environment just offers so much to the kids here in Alton. I think it's fantastic. I'm Mike Major, and that's it. So thank you.
Great. So this kind of now comes full circle, completely around to the beginning. So now we're looking at 2 different parts. We have our mission statement down at the bottom, which is directly related to the adult responsibility. So I'm going to read that one first and go back to the student responsibility. So everyone working within ACS, I think the really important thing there is everyone. We're talking about all adult responsibility. We're not just talking about teaching staff. We're talking about everybody that works in the building. So everyone working with ACS students is ensuring our students learn and apply the knowledge and skills essential to become critical thinkers and contributing citizens. That is our mission statement. So the key way to get there is back to the student responsibility. If we inspire the students to tell us about the things that they're interested in, we get to know them on a personal level and know what their interests are, we can deeper connect all of what we're teaching to what they're interested in, which really increases the buy-in of the student. So it makes them kind of, oh, I get to do this project, I'm really excited about that. And at the same time, they don't realize that you're kind of pulling in this other really, really important stuff and skills that are related. So I'll give an example. My 5th grade STEM kids are doing independent projects. They just came up with ideas from all over the place and things I don't know anything about. I'm learning. That's what this is all about. Because at the same time, they can teach me things that I know nothing about. And I can help them understanding, well, this is something that's related to something I know that's connected to what you know. And now it's really learning. So that's the direct connection between coming back to our mission statement and making it more about the students are responsible for this piece, and our responsibility is to guide them in getting where they need to be. Send it back to you.
I just want to close this evening with a quote from one of the professional development associations I belong to, the ASCD, it's the Association for Supervision of Curriculum Development, and this was one of their monthly flyers that they send out. And it's an article, it's the end of it just sums it up, and it says, it's just good teaching. All students have the right to learn something new every day, whether they're in the regular classrooms or in special education, language acquisition, or gifted programs. And every student will benefit from being pulled up to go beyond the curriculum at times. But as Tomlinson, meaning Carol Tomlinson, points out, learning should be joyful or at least satisfying rather than just hard. Is this challenging for educators? Sure. But according to Flores, any good teacher can do these things well. It's just good teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about a round of applause for both of these fine committees and the staff for 2 just wonderful presentations. Outstanding. Peter, could you get the light, please? Thanks. Are there any thoughts from anybody in the audience? They'd like to ask any questions or have any thoughts they'd like to share with us? Okay. Come on.
Good evening, Melissa Christensen. I have 2 children in Alton Central School right now. I believe they would both fall under the gifted, so that's kind of where my thoughts are right now. Mr. Miller referred to free throws, and I kind of want to understand, what are you going to do for the kids who shoot 10 out of 10? How are you going to challenge them? How are you going to engage them beyond that without using a pull-out model?
Well, in practice, again, I was hoping to see them instruct the kids who are not doing so well. So clearly that's what, clearly they can make 10 out of 10 free throws, so more practice, students need more practice. So can you go help Susie or John who's having trouble? Can you, basically teach them, can you run a clinic yourself? Can you, help me with that?
Can I jump in? Can I help?
Sure.
Okay. When you have the children who have mastered the competencies that you're at, then you take that same topic and you move it deeper. You take them deeper into it. So for the kids who maybe a 3rd or 4th grade, they're working on multiplication. They don't need that. They've got those facts. So let's give them a real-world model of you're going to run a lemonade stand, and you need to figure out how many supplies you need, and give them a project that they could actually use those skills on and create something from it. And maybe they want to take that lemonade stand to one of the games after school and actually do it. So we're going to take them deeper. We're going to use those same skills and have them create an authentic learning project.
May I jump in? One of the things I like to think of with some students, like the ones you're speaking about, is that we don't give them more work just because they were able to complete the beginning work, but sometimes they're going to have different work that will meet the same objectives, but that get them deeper and broader into the topics.
And can I just continue? Okay. How how would you say doing that inside the classroom is more beneficial than a pull-out model?
Research is showing, they call it clustering. So within the classroom, if you have all of the children together, but you group them homogeneously, you have some of your gifted children working together on their skills in one group. And you have your lower end kids maybe with an extra para working here, and you have your teacher working with your direct instruction. But they're all together, so they all feel equal. They all feel successful, and no one feels like they're being pulled out or that they're different, and they learn to work as equals. In society, we don't get pulled out in our building because we're different, so we don't want the kids to feel that they're different. We want them to feel that they're equal and they're partners and they're working together.
Great answer.
I just have another question, if that's okay. With the moving towards the project-based learning and the personalization,
Could you speak,
differentiation.
would you mind speaking up, please?
Sure.
Oh, there, thank you.
Is that better? My question is, with moving more towards the project-based learning and more personalization, differentiation, will the grading system change from traditional to standards-based?
I think the school is already in process of that. And I think Principal Blackstone can speak more to that because there are a number of different report cards. And
Right, yeah. I'm familiar with
that's something
those.
that we'll be looking at.
Okay.
But it's very transitional, but I'll let Chris answer that.
I am keenly sensitive to families that might have multiple or kids in different grades. And I do want to put out there that this year, 7th and 8th are not switching to competency-based report cards. That had been something that we had talked about, having them have the training and make that move. But as the superintendent knows and could talk about as well, ed regs tell us that we must switch to competency-based report cards, standards-based grading. So it's going to be something that's on the docket as an initiative for the whole faculty to really look at. The groundwork was laid already with Forbes being a curriculum director before, so we're up to a certain point. 5th grade is that funny cusp because it has 2 sides and how many pages, and Save a Tree is involved in that one, but we are putting 7th and 8th on hold. The 6th grade teachers are, right now, that's going to be the finish. Is Carl still here? Is he left? He's probably left because he's tired from what he's doing for helping us get the standards in the report cards the way it needs to be, the way they need to be for the 5th and 6th to match. So that's very much a work in progress, but with a keen eye on knowing what we have to do to be in compliance with state regs coming up. Don't look for it for 7th or 8th grade this year.
But if I can just add, that's an excellent observation, is that as education shifts here from a more traditional to a competency-based, you have to report it differently. And we have a wonderful opportunity to do that, but this year we really wanted to focus on building that culture and that expertise within the staff, that comfort level of doing more project-based, integrating in skills. Do we have to assess them? Yes, we absolutely do. But getting to that report card, I think we're focusing on process this year. And so next year we'll really look at that reporting and the assessment system and reporting it out.
I can add one thing that might help as a parent, help you as a parent. All the teachers are working really hard on rubrics for the projects. So we're really acknowledging the differentiation involved here. So let's just take as a real a symbolic kind of an answer. You might be doing an interpretive dance to show the tension between the 2 sides of the Civil War. Okay, that story could be very well told. We see it right now on Broadway with Hamilton. That story is being told in a poem, in a rap, but it's the accuracy is there in Hamilton. So we're seeing that in classrooms, that the students not earning a grade for having memorized the capitals of the 50 states, but in how are they sharing their knowledge about the 50 capitals of the 50 states. So for a student to say, well, I'm drawing maps and I'm showing you that capitals tend to be located on rivers because that's where trade had to happen and transportation had to happen. So it might say here, understands, the rubric might say, does the student understands the importance of geography or physical geography on state capitals, rather than you're being graded because you could rattle them all off and you did memorize them. So I think if you look at the rubrics, and I think often kids just go bing, 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 and they just run their finger down and say, oh, I got a 3. Oh, I got a couple of 4s. Oh, I'm good. But if you ask and say, can I see the rubric? I think the time that the teachers have spent designing them really merits having parents get to see them and see where where were the 4s or the 2s or the 3-point whatevers it was that the child earned on the rubrics. That's definitely phase one of understanding assessment and grading. And somebody really big in this topic right now is Rick Wormley. We had a faculty member go to the Berkshires last week and see Rick Wormley's presentation there. We've got somebody going tomorrow to see Rick down in Ceresque, Bedford, SNU. It's tomorrow. So, we're on top of it and really working hard on changing how does a standards-based report card, how does that really look and what should that feel like for projects?
Can I just jump, and we should get you a chair so you can sit.
We can have you come back another day and we can
Keep
talk
going
about
on
this,
here,
because it's
but
great to have somebody
good
want to
questions.
know.
The other thing, too, that I think is a stronghold that we now have is that we've got an assessment schedule for the year. And so we can regularly and systematically look at how children are advancing throughout the year and not just say at the end of the year, oh, here's your score. No, we can't respond to it now. It's May, it's June, now what do we do? Well, we now have in place, like Denise was saying, first benchmark is done. We'll have a winter, we'll have a spring. We can look at student information, even if it's not on the report card. Those assessments are measuring student growth. So we can share that with parents. The other nice thing about those assessments is that they're adaptive. So, in the old, I know the old test of if you're in the 99th percentile one year, our hope is that you don't drop because there's no other place for you to go. With the adaptive test that we're now using, and we're using NEWA with our older kids and we're using Smarter Balance, we can keep that scale going up so we can accurately measure and make sure that our highest kids aren't just, in the olden days it was, they'll be fine, they'll be okay, just let them go. That's not acceptable. We want to keep them growing and growing as well. And with the assessments we now have, we can do that. And while it's not the report card, and we're working on that, we have assessments that we're using right now to ensure that whatever we're doing is in the best interest of every single child in this school.
Thank you. Can I ask just one more? Sorry. I'm really happy to hear that the excellent enrichment educators are getting into the classrooms. I also heard as their schedule allows when that was being explained. So my question is, I don't know what the staff to student ratio is, and that's not what I'm asking, but moving more toward this type of learning, is that going to need to increase in order to allow them that time in their schedules?
It may. It may. Right now, we're fortunate that, if you look at everybody we've got sitting over there, we are a very fortunate district that has a lot of resources. And so we've got the people who are getting into classrooms, and we are covering 3 through 6 solidly, and we're looking at, even as the year goes on, doing more team coaching, more team teaching with 7th and 8th grade teachers as well. But it may mean down the road, and we're looking as a board, as an administrative team, at how do we make this even bigger. And we're looking at some things specifically around mathematics, and how do we enhance that learning in a very authentic way. And does it have to be on the sideline? Why can't we make astronomy part of our instructional day and make that real world learning? Why can't we make engineering part of a regular day for kids? I think we can do that. And yes, it may mean we have to look at staffing differently, or we've got the person who comes in from the local company who teaches it. We may have to do that. We may have to sit here in a couple of years and say, we need to increase staffing a little because we need this expert here, and we need this expert here, and this is our first phase to it. So I think this is all very exciting, that we're throwing out that net and we're casting it wide, because we want to hit every child and not just say, well, you're gifted and you're not, so you get this opportunity and you don't. Let's make sure everybody gets rich opportunities, because I don't know if you're good in geometry, but we just didn't test for that, and so sorry, but you're a great calculator and so let's make sure we hit everybody's abilities, and that's what we're really looking to do. But we may be looking for more staff in the future, not 17, 18 as we develop the budget right here. Yeah. We've got the staff that we need as we build the process.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience? Come on down.
Always something to ask, always something to add, right? I guess to piggyback on Melissa's questions a little bit, the kind of thought of the kids who are hitting 10 out of 10 of 3 kids with a very broad spectrum of abilities. And I am all for those kids kind of being the ones who coach those who maybe need a little bit of help. But where along the way does my 10 out of 10 get coached for a little bit of extra help too? So that would be one of my questions. And then I don't intend this to sound as bad as it's going to sound, but it's going to sound bad. So when you've got such a broad spectrum of kids, in my son's first grade class, I think there's 19 kids. Very wide range of abilities and competencies. So when you have this model of everyone coming in, and I think everyone should have the opportunities, I 100% agree and believe in what you're saying. But when you have such a broad spectrum of abilities, logic does dictate to some extent that there's going to be a greater level of emphasis placed or directed toward the kids who are further behind. And I agree with that, because you need to make sure that they're staying with their peer group and advancing and moving ahead. So how do you, this is all kind of a new process. How much time and co-teaching and additional development has been given to the classroom teachers we have today to be able to work in this model? It feels a little bit like we flipped a bit of a switch and said, we're not going to use this pull-out program, we're going to do a push-in program. And I understand some kids are still being pulled. But how are you equipping the teachers to balance this new model? And I believe we have fully competent teachers, 100% believe that. But how do we meet the needs of all of these kids when it just feels like logic does dictate that those who are further behind are going to get a little bit more of a boost so that everyone can move forward?
You want to take that, Superintendent?
I can, or Denise can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can add to it. First of all, we have, especially in the lower grades, we have classroom teacher assistants. So there are 2 adults in the classroom at all times. You also have your parents coming in to work with the more needy children, and we also have our sub teachers moving in. For instance, right now we're focusing on math in 2nd grade. We have taken 3 classes, combined them, broken them into 6 targeted areas. We have 6 adults working with those children 45 minutes every day to help with their individualized needs. Your higher end children, if you have a child, sometimes they might need to be pulled out to get that extra, and we're not ruling that out. If we have 1 or 2 children who just really need to go out and work on something on their own because that's their need, then they're going to get that. Okay? We're just not saying, we're just saying that we're not going to have the traditional, you 6 children are all going to go on Tuesdays for half an hour. It's going to be, let's look at their needs, let's focus on those needs, let's give them that within the classroom with all of the teachers who are teaching together. Teachers have been working on differentiated learning for several years now. They're learning, we continue to learn. I learn every day about it. We have book talks, we have professional development, they go to conferences, they're learning, and they're becoming very good at it. It is a hard job, and it's more difficult for planning. One of the ideas is that what we do, instead of planning for the middle and then breaking it down and building it up, we plan for the top. And then it's much easier to take those skills and take them down a little bit and down a little bit more for the children who need that. So if we're planning for the top, we're raising everyone up. We can accommodate for the children who aren't quite there yet. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think I have a follow-up to that, if I may. So again, only speaking from my personal experience, I can't speak for the masses. I understand kind of the thought of having 2 teachers in every classroom. Our experience in the lower grade is there's been a significant amount of inconsistency there, which, again, speaking from my experience, my child, that's challenging to my child. It's a scenario where he needs to know what's happening on a given day so he can mentally prepare, so he knows what is expected of him, so he knows what he's supposed to deliver, where he's supposed to be, what he's going to do. they're very structure oriented. So to not have that is a bit of a challenge, and it is almost a significant distraction. We had the experience last year when my second grader was in the pull-out program where she knew she had defined 2 days a week. These are the days that I'm going to go, and I know what's expected of me. I know what I need to be researching in advance for those projects. So to have it in a scenario where it's a little bit of a, maybe this week we need it, maybe next week we don't, could potentially introduce some challenges for some kids where they're not.
I think once they get used to, they're going to be in their classroom with their peers, they've got their teacher, and their teacher, all of their lessons are geared around the same topics and skill sets. They'll learn that today I might be working with Mrs. Foley today, or I might be working, but they're always in the same room, and they know that they're going to be working on this one topic. If they're working on a different project, it's going to be the same person working with them. It's not going to be well, today's them, today's them, unless it's a reading group that kind of rotates, and that would be on a normal schedule. It has been a little bit shaky because of staffing issues with maternity leave, and I agree, it's tough on little ones. I'm a mother of 4 children myself. But they're adapting, and I think we're settling in, and things are finally starting to come together, and hopefully, we'll be focusing on the children, their anxiety level will come down.
Okay. And then just one last question. We have established that was reviewed last summer and adopted policy IHBB, which is the program for gifted and talented students. And I'm curious to know how this particular policy plays into all of this structure and kind of what our go-forward strategy looks like there.
Run that by me again, the policy that you said.
IHBB is the identifier.
Right.
It's the program for gifted and talented students.
And is that too difficult to answer without having looked at
I would
and
have to
understand?
look at the policy.
Okay.
I mean, I'm familiar
Yeah.
with, yeah.
Well, yeah.
But what we use the best practices and the research around those best practices. We don't use any one specific factor when we're planning. We look at other districts, we look at what our students need, we look at the research. We're using Carol Tomlinson, Ruth Cornelli, and we're just really putting together a program that we feel best meets the needs of the students.
Okay. And if we have questions or challenges as things progress, okay.
Call me, I would love to meet.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Hi.
Angela Tarian, and while I appreciate the introduction as staff, I'm speaking as parent. I see a plan for as of October 24th that is taking place for grades 3 and 4. What is the plan for 5th grade?
5th grade will have, they have their cohort of children who were pulled out last year. They are also being pulled out.
Can everybody hear?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. 5th grade pullout will start this week with Mrs. Foley, and they'll be being pulled out once a week also.
Okay. This year seems to focus on grades 3, 4, and 5. Why wasn't 2nd grade included in that?
2nd grade, well, last year's 1st graders were only pulled out for a short time.
My son was part of that. He was pulled out 2 days a week, or 2 days in a 6-day cycle all year.
That's not.
If there's an individual situation, that's something that, excuse me, we'd prefer that you go through the chain of command on that.
Sure, no problem.
But also I'd like to add, we did have this discussion. 1st and 2nd graders are very young. They're getting to know their roles as students and as peers. And personally, I feel, and I know that, some of my colleagues agree, that they need that time in the classroom to just learn what their role is and to be comfortable with that. It really, honestly, is too early to be pulling them out unless you have a real outlier that is, that needs to be pulled, and we would certainly look at that and give them their needs.
So, thank you.
Anybody else from the audience? Questions from the board, or any thoughts from the board?
I have a few questions. Mostly on some of the slide is the school-wide enrichment opportunities. And I just have a couple questions on the different programs. Where it says after-school sessions, is that,
Can you tell me what page you're on?
it's page 7 on the,
It's the Mike Major slide.
Okay.
I like the Mr. McDuff slide. Mr. McDuff is 2 minutes, so is Mike Major.
Okay.
so it says after-school sessions, is that, does that refer to, which most of these programs are actually after school?
Not all of them.
No, not all of them.
Right, right.
But is that, do these after-school sessions, are they pointing at these, at those other programs that are already down there, or are we
No,
talking
these are
about?
different. We have, after school, we have rotating enrichment classes. We have cooking, right now, we have cooking, outdoor activities, martial arts, photography, and I'm missing one, drama. Drama club's listed separately. So the children come in from 3 to 4 in the afternoon and enjoy the clubs and the sessions, and they will rotate, and I'll be starting up new ones as they come along.
Very good. Are summer programs, do we already have STEM summer programs that are being done or have been done in the past, or is this something that's going to be
No,
new?
previously we've had our traditional summer school.
Yeah.
This year we would like to have a theme-based program and focus on STEM.
I'm unfamiliar with Tetrix.
Tetrix is very much like the Lego League. It's building robotics and working with robotics. It can also go to a competition, but we're going to start it up this year. Mr. McDuff is very excited about it.
Okay.
And I think that it's really going to offer more to the older students who may be outgrowing the Legos, and it's very much geared to pushing them into BABA, the high school.
Very similar to erector sets. It's radio-controlled erector sets.
Is there an FLL this year? Because I believe it had already
Yes.
started at this point last year.
What we decided to do was, it was a late start this year. It should normally start, and we need to plan this spring. If we're going to bring it in next year, it needs to be planned before we leave in June and get it started the first week in September. Where I didn't take my position until July 1st, and I actually didn't come to work for the position until the late in August. It was very late this year, so we decided to use it as a building year. We'll have it for the junior children, grades 1 through 3, I believe it is. It's ages 6 to 9. So Mrs. Foley and Mrs. Sanger will be running that. It's going to start November 2nd. And then we'll have the Tetrix, which will not be a competition, but it will be a building year also for that. And that will start in December.
That's it?
Anything else, Peter?
I just had one question. What was referred to as Quest?
Quest was the enrichment program. It was, I don't even know what the acronym was actually stood for. Understanding, enrichment. It was a program that was formally run, and it was the balloon over exactly what we're doing. We just don't call it Quest.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just some basic observations. I really don't have any questions because I'm still a layperson when it comes to education. But that being said, you know, over the course of the last year, there was a number of concerns in the community, the parents, the staff. Everybody had legitimate concerns that we hoped would be addressed. It looks to me, at least, and it's certainly more than the last 2 months, that a number of these significant issues that people were very, very concerned about, and rightfully so, okay, have taken a front page and have been addressed. As an example, did we have a real plan? I believe from what I've heard today, we have a real plan. We got a gifted and talented and a STEM program. It is well thought out. And although it's not perfect and it has to be tweaked, and it's going to be better next year and it's going to be better the year after that, there is a legitimate plan out there. And there's accountability. Where people have to be someplace at some time, where these kids have to be taken out at some time, where these kids have to be taught at some time, that isn't being done essentially on the fly. I believe that it's being more tightly managed, and I'm excited about that. I see where we're leveraging our strengths and we're really addressing our weaknesses. And as long as you keep doing that, it's going to evolve in the right direction. I feel comfortable that you are really focused in on the curriculum, and that you're keeping this tight as possible, especially with the use of data management. Okay, where you're looking for quantitative or forensic evidence. You're not just going to intuitively think, well, these kids are smarter now. I like that. Okay, and it looks to me like the teachers are excited. I'm certainly excited about the quality of the teachers that are teaching the program. And I just want, on behalf of the board, I think I'm not speaking out of turn, that we will get you whatever resources you need to make this, something special in the school.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, Andrea Caruso. I am actually meeting with Ms. Perry tomorrow. We'll have a more in-depth conversation. But to respond to what you just said, we just heard that 1 grade isn't starting to their enrichment until next week. And that's 8 weeks in that they have missed. And my daughter's in 4th grade, and she actually hasn't had a steady schedule for what she's received for her enrichment time. It's after 6 weeks, she'd only met, including the field trip, she'd only met 3 times. So when we say that it's more tightly managed, and that that we're moving on here, I think that it has been a rough start, and like you have a plan going forward, but the plan hasn't been enacted extremely well at this present moment in time. And I understand that there are logistical concerns about staffing and so on and so forth, but I don't think that it's. I think that as a parent, our views about this situation are still very different. And then the last thing that we're coming up onto the Smarter Balance stuff, so I'll just preempt my question now. We did take the NWEA tests, and we got those scores, and we got our Smarter Balance scores. And I asked last year about this time about how have we correlated the two between, like I have as a parent, but as a district, have we done that? And so I'll let you guys get to that one for that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question or two. How is one-to-one and WIN being incorporated with the enrichment? Is that being utilized at all? I don't really understand what one-to-one and WIN are. From what I've heard, it has involved.
All right, first of all, WIN stands for What I Need. And the children have it for anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day. That is the period of time where they are getting the services. They go to a teacher that they're assigned to for that period, and they go, and the teacher checks in with each child. What do you need to do today? Do you need extra help in any subject? If they do, then they go to see that teacher that they need extra help with. Or they may sit with another teacher in the room or the teacher that's working with them. Do you need to finish homework or a project? If you do, then what do you need to do that? Do you need your computer? Do we need to go to the library? And children are checked in with, and they are spending that time working on what they need. If they are finished with everything, then we have specific project-based learning going on for enrichment for each grade level that they can be working on those projects independently from whichever teacher is teaching that. The one-on-one time is specifically shorter, and it's meant as a technology time. It might be 15 minutes, it might be a half an hour, but that's when they're on their computers and they're using technology for enrichment. They might be working on IXL, and the classrooms have targets that they're shooting for, and they get certificates for when they complete those targets. They might be working on code.org, working on Scratch, doing programming, or if they need to be doing research, they can be doing that also. But that's the difference. So yes, it is enrichment, and sometimes it's not. It really depends on what that child needs. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you kind of make it sound like, and don't take this the wrong way. well, however way you're going to take it.
Say.
It kind of sounds like what I need is a glorified study hall.
You know what,
And
it is, but it's focusing and being very purposeful about that study hall, that those children are doing what they need to do during that time. When I was in high school, I'd go to study hall and we'd be chewing gum and you know, pass the notes. That's not happening. These children have targets. You need to be doing this, you're doing this, and the teachers are really focusing on all of their students and making sure that they're using the time wisely.
I would add, like on the 8th grade level, where I'm seeing it, that within the room, a student happens to miss a lab. There's your what I need. They have to go finish that lab for me. They have to come in. They have the ability to redo an assignment for me, because they can redo any assignment that they wish to do for going to the next level, what their understanding was before. That's the type of use, and they have free movement between whatever room they might be assigned to my room, to a social studies room, to a language arts room for revisions. So it really makes it very fluid. So it's not just a study hall, it's that they're actually saying and taking ownership over what do they need to do. And if we need to tell them, yeah, we'll nudge them in the right direction, but a lot of times, especially on the 8th graders, they're making their choice themselves. And they're telling us, this is what I need to do. And that means they're taking ownership over their own and what they need to do. And that's where I say it's really powerful. And I think as you go down, it's kind of teaching them how to do that. Because the 8th graders have got it already, but we need to kind of step with it.
Well, when you talked about finishing homework, and it kind of defeats the purpose of homework, and I think it's...
Well, research is out on homework. We're really struggling with that. And actually, the 3rd and 4th grade aren't assigning homework this year.
Yeah.
So I should say assignments. Do you have assignments you need to complete? It might not be homework, but it's some kind of work that they need to complete for their class that they didn't have time to do in class.
It might also be that they went to do their homework and they hit a stumbling block. Well, now they've got a win to come in and be able to use to go see that teacher to get past that stumbling block on what their homework was, if it was something like that. That's another way I see it used a lot. So they're thinking ahead, and their time management skills will greatly improve because of having to plan by that in their schedule. Well, I can use when to do this because I'm going to need some help with this. So they're really getting that. I mean, I am speaking for the kids, but that's what I'm seeing. So.
And I've actually been walking around the school during wind time in the last week, and it's really amazing. It was a rough start. It was very disjointed, and the children weren't really sure how to do it. But the teachers are managing them now, and you can walk by, and I was actually really impressed with the middle school. I walked by each room, and every student was completely doing something different, although you might have a couple working together. And the teachers were, you know, just roaming and proctoring, but it's working very well. I was very impressed with how it was going last week.
We have another significant presentation. Do you have any additional ones?
I think that's
I
covered.
don't want to cut you off, Peter.
No, that should be about it.
Okay.
I would just like to say thank you to all of you. One of the comments you just made about the kids and the change. Change is always really difficult. And kids are resilient. We learn it over and over and over. The kids are resilient. It's probably the adults that have the harder time changing than the kids. I'd like to thank Chris and Superintendent Stiles and Principal Blackstone for leading this group and keeping you all excited. And I'm very excited about the things that are happening.
Thank you. Next, with the pleasure of the board, I'd like to move to Smarter Balanced and take a look at the results and what are we doing going forward.
Do you want to take a 5-minute, or are you good?
Would everybody prefer to take a 5-minute break? Or shall we just move right on? Let's move right on.
Okay, here we go.
Nobody's falling over yet.
I'm freezing.
Yeah,
It's cold in here.
All right.
It's that fan.
So in the spring of 2016, Alton Central School participated in Smarter Balance testing. The only difference was that last year it was paper and pencil. The year before it had been computerized. So grades 3 through 8 participated. They were English, language arts, and mathematics based. And during these tests, they have to demonstrate and apply their knowledge and skill areas in places like critical thinking, and then analytical writing, and problem solving. And there are 4 different kinds of problems that we use. The next slide. So we have selective response, which are your traditional multiple choice questions, where they choose 1 or more answers. We have the technology enhanced, when they're asked to edit text, highlight, draw an object using the technology tools. We have constructed response, where they're asked to actually answer a question in a written form in a paragraph, or maybe do a numerical response for math. And then we have their performance task, where they have to actually set up and do a task that may take 3 or 4 different steps. And then they have to explain how they got there. So there are 4 claims areas in English and language arts. There's reading, writing, listening, and the research and inquiry. And in mathematics, there are 3, the concepts and procedures, problem solving, and communicating their reasoning. So here are our results. Last year compared to the state. The state is in orange at the top, and ACS is in the red underneath. 8th grade, you can see in ELA did a little bit better than the state. Grade 7 was almost equal. Grade 6 was right on the nose equal with the state. Grade 5 a little bit above. Grade 4 was just below, and grade 3 was quite a bit above. So in ELA overall, we're not thrilled with the results because it still puts us in the 50, 60 percentile, and we would like to be up in the 75th, 85th percentile, but we were fairly close to the state average on that test. Looking at the year before, 2015, 2016. 2015 is in red, 2016 is in orange, and then the state is in kind of that funny brown color. You can see that in ELA, we increased our scores with the exception of 7th grade in ELA. And then we have our math achievement. Again, the state is in orange at the top, ACS is in red at the bottom, and this is definitely a critical area of need for us. Although in some classes, 7, 6, 5, and grade 3, we were at or above the state level, it's still significantly low.
Can you address what the problems are? Or will you do that later?
Yeah, we'll
Thank
find
you.
our weaknesses.
All right.
And again, looking at, and these are not cohorts, these are simply the grade levels testing out from 2015 and 16. You can see that in 2016, our scores were higher, with the exception of 8th grade in math, but we're still significantly low. If we look at proficiency by cohort, so these are grade 3 to 4, these are the same students testing from 15 to 16. In ELA, you can see that there was definite growth in those cohort groups. Okay, so grade 3 to 4, we went from 46% to 51%, 52 to 65%, 51 to 59%, 31 to 60%, and then 76 down a little bit to 70%, all in ELA. In math, this is where our drops are, and I'm going to cover that in just a minute. We went in grade 3 to 4, we went from 52% proficient to 45. Grade 4 stayed about the same, 46 to 47. Grade 5 went from 57 to 48. Grade 6 from 64 to 52. And grade 7 from 50 to 33%. Here are our needs. Across the board, we are very low in research and inquiry. This is that depth of knowledge for the children need to learn how to read and use that information to answer questions and to dig deep and to analyze. We were also very low in 8th grade writing. But on the same note, we were high in writing on grades 3 through 5, and listening was very high for 3, 6, 7, and 8. In math, we are low again in communicating that reasoning that goes right across the board with the research and inquiry. It's the same thinking, it's the same skills. That's where our focus is going to have to be. We were also low in grades 4 and 5 in our concepts and procedures and our data analysis in 5th grade. So again, these analysis questions, it's all the same skills. These are our targeted focus areas for this year. So this is a report that the parents received from the state. They, the marker on the side tells them where their student landed as far as their scale score, and it gives them a description of the level that they're at. At the bottom, there's a performance key that tells them how their child did. It's a little bit deceiving. If you look at the key at the very top, the legend, they get an exclamation point if they're below standard. They get a check if they're above standard. If I see a check mark, I'm not thinking, wow, my child's above standard. So it's a little bit deceiving. And they get a minus mark if they're at or near the standard. I'm not quite sure, but hopefully the parents are reading the key so that they understand. Then we go to our science kneecaps. Our 4th and 8th grades were tested last year. We had, I'm just looking at, we've got the 2015 scores up there also. And last year we had no students that scored in 4th grade as distinguished. That was down from 4 in 2015. The state had 2. In proficient, last year we had 42%. The year before was 61%. Partially proficient, 38, and the year before was 33. So we're moving a few more children into the partially proficient area. They're losing some skills. And substantially below, we had 21% last year in the 4th grade. And the year before it was only 2%. Again, the skills that we're looking at are those analytical skills. Whoops.
Hold on.
Okay. And then we can break it down by the possible points that they could have gotten. In physical science, we received 59% of the points. In 4th grade, 59%, in 8th grade also. In earth, space, and science, 52%, 8th grade was 54%. They're very, very close together. Life science, 55%, 8th grade was 64%, and in inquiry, 41% and 40%. Again, that's our lowest point. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to use? This is one piece of information about our children. We also have our our classroom assessments, our daily observations, working with the children. We know where their needs are. Now we're really going to target it in. We're going to use those NVIDIA tests that they just took to really look at those standards and the skill sets that we need to focus upon. We're going to have conversations with parents and teachers about how they're doing. What can we do at home to help us out here at school? We're using this as a tool to help guide us and to improve the learning. This is how we identify where we're strong as a district and where we're weak as a district. So we work together and really focus in on what we need to do. Okay, so our analysis is that grades 3 and 8 are stronger in ELA than they are in mathematics. Grades 3 through 5 have a general area of strength in writing. 3 and 4, their highest math component was in problem solving, modeling, and data analysis. Grades 6 through 8 showed their strength in listening and ELA. They were relatively strong in their math concepts and procedures. In both the ELA, the research inquiry, and the math communicating reasoning, there's our pattern of weakness. In all grades, we will continue to analyze their specific data and address those patterns as we go throughout the year. So our response to all of this, I shared this with our staff at a meeting about a month ago. I meet regularly with all of the teachers to discuss how they're meeting our needs. I meet with every group at least once a month, but I also check in with them weekly. I pop in and see how they're doing. Do you have any questions? Do you need to come see me? They're gaining a better understanding of the depth of knowledge as we talk about the different levels and we work that into their instruction and make sure they're hitting all of those levels. We have our year-long assessment calendar ready to go. We've got the fall benchmarks done, and I'm already marking out the winter schedule. Our math PD is being scheduled for K-8. We just had a webinar the other day on working with accelerated math for our enrichment students, but we're also focusing in. We're going to have math and focus trainers coming in once a month starting in January to work with our teachers specifically by grade level in the math program. Our enrichment team is working with teachers to design those authentic learning models for the students so that they understand, why am I learning this? What can I use it for? The WIN block is being used so that they can get their intervention needs met. And we'll be using those, the SBAC practice tests in the classrooms to help the kids get used to the questions and using the computer to take the test so that if there were any errors because they weren't familiar with the technology, they'll be comfortable by the time they test again. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a great report.
Well, any questions? We'll start from the audience.
I'm wondering if in your analysis, was there any weight given, I guess, I'm not sure the right phrase, to the fact that kids took the test in two different mediums year over year?
We did think about that, and obviously, yes, it's gonna have some weight to it. There are mitigating factors, but hopefully they did their best on both tests, and we have the results. It's not gonna sway the fact that we're weak in these areas. Now we know where our target focus is, and we can look at that.
And do we plan to move back to the computer testing this year?
Yes, we will be ready. The children all have their one-to-ones. They're all working beautifully with the assessments, and they will be doing them on the computers.
Great. Just an observation from my perspective, I do a bit of analysis in my professional career. It felt a little bit like, in maybe the third to last slide that you had, we're a little bit all over the place by grade level.
We are.
With the exception of that, essentially what I would tie back to the depth of knowledge, the kind of analytical thinking processes, which I think ties back directly to the presentation that you all gave earlier, specifically Mrs. Foley's slides, Mr. Papasino's slides, where you talked about creating that depth of knowledge. That's something that I think, in my experience with my family, we've done a great job of that in the past. So I hope to see that continue. And then I could have just stood up and cheered when Mr. Papasino said, we need to teach these kids how to fail. Because right now I can tell you that some of my kids come home and they're super confident that they know everything that's being taught in the classroom, but that's not good enough. They need to learn that they don't know everything. And that whole analytical problem-solving process, you will fail if you don't know how to fail.
Absolutely.
And in my professional career, I have interns coming in from UNH who don't know how to fail. So please, let's put some focus on that and teaching these kids that it's okay to take risks, it's okay to take chances. But I believe that for them to be willing to take those chances, they have to have that core fundamental knowledge as a basis. So we need to make sure that we're supporting everyone in that process too. So it's a balance. I don't envy any of you because I know it's not easy. But please, in all of this, let's look at all of the tests that they're taking, use them as tools, and let's teach them how to figure out how to be contributing citizens. Absolutely.
You know, and we're, Anna, just to add in here, we're very fortunate now in education that we have so much neuroscience that we have at our fingertips, that we've got some great work in mindfulness from Carol Dweck, who talks about just what you're talking about, that perseverance, that it's okay to fail because I learned from it. And what was the response of my teacher when I did fail? And that it was okay, and I learned from it. But we're very fortunate in education these days because we have those kinds of tools at our fingertips. And to be able to take data like this, and rather than zero in on a 32, recognizing that we did have two forms of a test, and recognizing that, you know, what challenges there were with technology. You know, we don't want to make excuses, but maybe explain. But we can look at patterns and say, you know, the one glaring thing for me is, wow, that whole right side of the table says we need real work and inquiry. What better way to do it than through problem-based, project-based learning, through authentic learning, through putting in the skills that way? If nothing else, I think that's the area of looking at, is this inquiry, depth of knowledge, problem solving, perseverance, get it done. That's where we need to be.
So again, going back to my personal experience, that whole process is what we had in our Quest program, and changes, I agree, are hard, especially for adults, right? So it's a bit of a shift in dynamic, but I can tell you there's a palpable difference in the level of enthusiasm of my children coming home. Not in a great way. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'd agree with that.
But my kids, last year, I'm not a science person, I think I spoke about this before. My daughter would come home and she'd say, Mommy, we're working on this program, and we're building out a video, and we each have these pieces, and we're learning about different pieces of the solar system, and we're building it out with the, I don't even know the technology solutions that they were using, and they put music behind it, and they narrated it, and they all had all of this factual information. She doesn't have that kind of thing this year. That process started for her in first grade. She started with that program. My first grader doesn't have that level of enthusiasm. I hope that maybe what we've seen tonight is a starting point to bring some of that back, to give them that enthusiasm again.
We do. And you need to keep us posted as to whether or not it's there.
I will. Thank you.
Can I make a comment for the board pertinent to the final bullet in Denise's last slide was about something specific about Smarter Balanced?
I thought we'd answer all questions from the audience.
Oh, sorry,
first.
okay.
Okay, and then we'll go to the DS.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just want to caution you about how much testing we're doing also. I just want to say that I have some reservations about doing NEWA 3 times in the year, along with Smarter Balance, along with science kneecaps for grades 4 and 8. I just don't want the kids to be so tested out. My philosophy is NEWA in the fall, Smarter Balance in the spring, because I can get similar data and I'm not testing. It takes a long time to do the full NEWA test, and we just finished it ourselves. It takes a long time in a K-8 building. And Smarter Balance is even longer because of all the windows. K-8 buildings suffer the most during Smarter Balance because of the windows that they give us. We don't have those specific grades for those windows. So I just want to caution you not to over-test our kids, because science kneecap are 4th grade and 8th grade, so then they have NEWA in the fall, again in the winter, then in the spring they have a science kneecap, and then they also have Smart Balance. So please consider that also as a committee and as a school, to just be very cautious about over-testing our kids. Thanks.
Anybody from the audience? Chris?
Right, as a real unplanted but case in point for what we're doing to really help our scores and help with the analytic process, don't spin quickly, but if you look over Peter's right shoulder, there are 12, we call them the 12 power words. These were 12 words that are on repeat throughout the Smarter Balance test. So we're asking every teacher, we started this last year and it comes from transformational school practices, but those are the common words that we're asking every teacher to use when they're giving instructions to kids, so that the children are really familiar with what instructions might they be given on a test. So for instance, number 7 says support. So this is a music room. So when the music teacher's having dialogues with kids, they'll say, well, support, why did you say that? Support, why do you think Beethoven is, support, why do you think this is exciting music? If they all use these words, so a 4th grade kid hears that from Miss Harrison, hears it from Mr. Perrin, hears it from Mrs. McGillicuddy, the kids really get comfortable knowing what do they want me to do? What must I do? What is expected of me? And that's in our classrooms, and the teachers talk a lot about being comfortable saying those words when they're giving instructions to kids. And it's unplanted. It's just right there. It shows you that we're really trying and really working on how can all teachers take some ownership with what are they doing. It's the practice test, but what do we learn that's in there that helps you change your teaching practice to the groups of students you have.
Okay. Open it up to the board. Just a couple of questions. Do we have a systemic problem?
Based on the results that we have, I question, do we have a problem with our math program, or do we have a problem with just too much change? So we really need to get that training in here this year with the Math in Focus, get our teachers feeling very, very comfortable with how it is to be presented to the students. And let's look at the results next year and see if they've made substantial growth, and then we'll know for sure.
My own observation is that I'm disappointed with the results, as I'm sure most people would be, from all stakeholders. I'm disappointed that there's only average proficiency to less against along all cohorts. And what I'm really disappointed is there's no spot of excellence. There's no outlier out there where, you know, that there's some type of extraordinary resource in the school that, how did you do it? We don't have that. And from a layperson, the problems either exist through curriculum, teaching proficiency, administration, or the kids, okay? Assuming the kids don't have a unique demographic profile, you know, that would account for this, okay? I gotta get rid of the kids. I mean, I gotta X out the kids. Don't get rid of them.
Not the kid's fault.
Not the kids.
We're out of business.
Not the kid's fault, okay? And what I'm interested in asking the curriculum coordinator and the superintendent, where do you think the emphasis, we have got an idea what the solutions could be, okay? But where is the problem, the major problem that you have to address first? Is it the teaching proficiency? Is it the leadership behind that? You know, or is it the curriculum as was in place before and now?
I would say it's a combination of many factors. We have a lot of children who come in without having preschool. So when we get to kindergarten and we have our kindergarten class, I was just looking at the scores today, we have probably a good half of our students are early emergent learners. And then you look at the other half, and we've got a few that are already transitional, going into first grade level. And we've got a few that are a little bit above level. So they're already on different playing fields in kindergarten. And then working with our curriculum. These children come in and I've been teaching for 18 years. I have 4 children of my own, and I've seen the change with society and the culture. Children are used to getting everything quickly and easily. Technology makes it easy for them. So a lot of them don't have that perseverance or that will to really push and try. They give up too easily. We need to really instill that into them as they come in. So it's a work in progress. We're constantly fighting that easy fix, that society, they see it on TV, they hear it from the older kids. It's just out there, and so it's a constant battle. We have extremely well-qualified teachers here. Our curriculum has been tweaked. It's constantly being adjusted and made better. I think it's just a matter of all of us working together, of settling down. The atmosphere in the building has been uncomfortable for a couple of years, and it has shown on the children. And I just have a vision of, we have wonderful, wonderful teachers and families, and all of us working together for the benefit of the children. And let's just bring that joy and that excitement to the kids and let them learn and explore and put that work ethic into the classroom to teach them. And once we do that, and once they feel safe to go ahead and fail and learn from their mistakes, once we give them those skills, they're going to come along and learn the rest of the academia as they move along. But that's what I see.
Okay, so you would assign concerns across all 4,
I do.
about all 4
I do.
areas?
I don't think it's any one specific area.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Excuse us, please. I didn't call the audience just yet. Thanks. Is there, is there any particular strategy or program going forward, that we're using to address any of these significant areas of concern?
Well, like Denise said, we've already contacted Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. They're going to be coming out and doing some sustained professional development for us, working with K-8 teachers in a way, for a couple of reasons really. Let's make sure that we are using our program with fidelity so we can ensure where the problem is. If we're not using the program with any sense of sustained fidelity, then we don't know if the program's working or not. So we need to get that in check first. And then to really determine, once teachers have that comfort, is that the right program for us? with the standards that we now need to teach, is Singapore what we need? And I know I've got my own thoughts about it, but I think that we need to let the staff go through that. But Denise used some great words: excitement, joy. Those are the kinds of things that I think we need to infuse in what Anna was saying about, you know, her daughter coming home, or Peter's kids. We have to put in systems that create this joy and excitement of learning, because that's how kids buy in. And I think one of the good things that the board did was to create a goal focused around math that talks about the excitement of learning mathematics and building that within. And as a result of that, and we'll be bringing that forward to the community soon, is in the budget process for next year, creating a program called Math Investigations, but making it real world and making it authentic and bringing in people from the outside who are the real experts in areas like engineering and programming and art and geometry, and making it real for kids and building that excitement. I think those are the kinds of things that you see in magnet schools. Those are the kinds of things that you see in high achieving schools. That's what we want to bring here. So while we're building the capacity of math and determining, is it the program, is it that we've kind of fallen and we're putting in math where we're comfortable, I'm not quite sure that's what it is, but we need to figure that out first, and then supplement that with math excitement and energy and get the kids really engaged in that.
Are we doing anything right now today that is addressing those scores so that we can expect some type of reasonable progression next year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We've got a curriculum coordinator on the ground meeting with teachers regularly. We're analyzing data. We're starting to target instruction. Absolutely. And then we will have our professional development every single month for those teachers.
Anybody else from the board? Hearing none, we'll open it back to the audience again.
Hi, Andrea Crusoe again. So with the Smarter Balance test, when you guys get the scores back as a department, I've never seen the results besides what comes into the child's report. Does it break it down by strands in terms of skill sets beyond like those four that you said, listening or whatever? Is it like, so for math, like will it give a computation range and a number? So it does give strands, okay. So in with the NWEA testing, which is an adaptive testing, like, I'm not sure if you're aware of the mindset about a lot of people when it comes to like these big stakes tests. Like as an educator, you know, we prep the kids, we give them the O2, like you can do it. Third grade team did an amazing job last year of doing all that for the kids. It's grueling. It's a grueling testing schedule, and there's a lot of mental fatigue that happens, you know, for the kids, you know, especially for the 8-year-olds as they move on beyond. So the NWEA is NWEA, instead of NWA is a whole other story. NWEA is an adaptive test. It's smaller, you know, and are you going to be doing the data analysis between the two? Because I suspect if you look at the NWEA scores, you're going to be a lot more pleased with the results as opposed to the Smarter Balance aspects. And like I said, just changing mediums and so on and so forth, you know, is a problem. And I know that there's a lot of skill sets to be delineated with the NWEA as opposed to this proficiency, non-proficiency for the others. So I really hope that we would see in the next couple months some data back to the public of how our Smarter Balance scores relate to our NWEA scores.
Anybody else from the audience? Seeing none, we'll close that presentation. And next on the agenda is housekeeping. We have the next meeting when?
November 14th.
November 14th. Is 5:30 still appropriate for everybody? Okay. So that'll be the next meeting. Anybody else have any other concerns on housekeeping? Hearing none, moving right along to minutes. Please take a look first at the minutes of September 10th. And I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I will second that.
I wasn't there. It says members present, and it's got me there, so.
Okay.
Oh, and under the roll call.
Yeah, under the roll
Yeah.
call, it says it, but at the top, it,
Okay, we'll move you to absent. All those in favor of the motion as amended, of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
I'll abstain.
And one abstention, thank you. We'll move to September 12th minutes, draft minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of September 12th.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. All those abstaining?
I will abstain.
Got it. Okay. Next, we're going to move to enrollment, current enrollment figures. ACS at 479, Prospect Mountain at 263, for a total of 742 students. Both enrollments are declining as anticipated for the last few years. Just a word of note, should be within the next 2 years, we have been paying the majority of Prospect Mountain High School's operational budget, and that may flip around within the next 2 years where Barnstead will be paying the majority if the trend that's in place continues. Next, and just for the record, homeschoolers, let me see here. Thank you. We have a total of 39 elementary school students that are being homeschooled and 20 high school students that are currently being homeschooled, for a total of 59.
That's interesting, because we've stayed right around
Yes,
40
we have.
students at the elementary.
It's been very, our homeschool numbers are very consistent over the last 10 years or so, very consistent.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, moving along, we have, you have in front of you the financials, the payroll for the month of $494,185, and payables of $635,611, which is the bills. So we paid out for the month $1.129 million. A mere bed that shows. We also have in front of you the budget up to 10/19/2016. And are there any questions concerning any variances in the budget? The only significant variance I notice is salary in the teacher's account, down about $48,000. But other than that, there's no significant variances. Correspondence. There was some correspondence sent to the superintendent that across the street, they'll be converting a 7,500 square foot building
Not here.
into a multi-tenant storage facility.
High school.
Oh, that's the high school?
It's at the high school.
Across the street.
It's across the street from the SAU office, that's what I meant.
My question is,
Yeah.
do they send this to Barnstead? 'Cause Barnstead's technically half owner.
I don't know.
Could somebody make sure that this gets up to the high school?
Sure.
When is the date?
The hearing will be November 15th.
Yeah, that'll be enough time for them to let the Barnstead members know.
They go before the planning board, and after that, probably the zoning board. Okay, superintendent received some information from the Department of Education concerning IDEA grants. It seemed to be pretty much just an explanation of,
Yes.
and did not reflect any monies to or from or any grants to ACS.
Correct. It was a report of compliance.
And we complied in all aspects.
Beautifully, yes.
Perfectly, as a
Yep.
matter of fact.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Next, disposal of equipment. We're getting rid of an old television set, a piano on stage, and a scoreboard once they are removed from the gymnasium, which I assume has been by now. Right? Okay. And the policy, is attached, and so the simple question is the policy being followed in the distribution of those 3 items?
They are, and that's why they're coming forward to you. There are 4 avenues for disposal. The first one is to making them available to the Historical Society. Second is to sell them to the highest bidder, and then to donate them to charitable organization or to give them to local citizens. So Chris knows about what these items are and the state of their condition, and maybe can make some recommendations as to what she would like to do with them.
Thank you. I would assume that we should really see about, let's talk about the scoreboards first, although those were listed later in the list. Those, I believe, should be done the same way we did the trailer last year, where the trailer went on Craigslist to find out who wanted to, and then we asked that people send in a sealed letter into the SAU, and those were opened at a certain time, and then somebody got to buy the trailer. I think we should do that with the scoreboards. There has been interest expressed in those scoreboards. So I think there's something to be said there for that. That's what I'd recommend for those. As for the television set, I believe that it's old enough that we really could say that that doesn't need to go through that process. By the time we spend the time on task to do that, I don't think there's any marketable value for that. I would recommend that is to pay the fee and take that up to the dump. That's what I would suggest. That's not a choice on there, but I would say it's not worth our time on task to do anything with the television. The piano is interesting. I've asked Greg Nevu and Melinda to talk about that, think about that, and they've determined that it has potentially some value as a prop or as something that a person might want for restoration and looking at the wood and the beauty of it. But for us to pay and take care of it and retune it and get it in the shape it needs to be is probably not so interesting. So it could be offered, and then we can make a determination at the next meeting what you want to do about the piano based on the kind of responses we get about the piano.
Well, I think you offer it to the senior home.
That's a choice. Falls under the first category. I think that was on there. We can do that.
Yeah.
Moving the piano is the feature that will end up being a cost to someone. Yeah. It's not just move it. It's not just a couple of guys and a pizza. It's really a task to move it and reestablish it.
Give them a call.
Yep, we can do that. Happy to do that.
Great. Okay, donation. We got a piano. That's why we're getting rid of the old one. And thank you, David Countway, for the donation of a piano.
And thanks, Greg Nevu, again, because Dave Countway approached me about it, and I said that the concept was wonderful, and Dave is taking care of the moving cost for the school to donate it to the school from his source for the piano. I had Greg Nevu actually look at the piano. He and Dave looked at it, thought about it, talked about it, and Greg was thrilled to have it be part of the equipment that we could have here at school. So it was only
it's
after.
Obviously a better one than we're getting rid of.
I would hope that was the thought process Mr. Nevu employed when he explored the pianos. Mm-hmm. I believe it is based on the history of the piano and some of the things that Dave Countway has shared about the piano.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll move to personnel.
Personnel.
We have 3 new hires. I'd like to make a request that we go to non-public on the new hires.
Okay.
Is that all right with the board?
That's fine. Just the new hires?
Just the new hires?
So do you want me to make a motion for the athletic department and the co-curricular?
Please.
I'd like to move that we hire Heather Corriveau for girls A basketball and Samuel Huggard for boys B basketball.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go ahead. Co-curricular.
Co-curricular activity stipends, including gifted and talented enrichment, Chris Quarton for Coloring Club, Roxanne Weymouth for cartography. What is that?
Mapping.
What is that?
Mapping.
Oh, just mapping, okay.
Cartography mapping.
Lori Argue for outdoor activities, Lori Argue for Cooking Club, Pam Maynard for Destination Imagination, Carol Ann Foley for Professional Development Committee, Krista Argyropoulos for Web Presence Committee. Is that a new committee?
It is. It is.
Pam Forbes for Web Presence Committee, and Deb Brown for Web Presence Committee, and Patricia Solier for Future Prospects. That's it.
And I will second that.
Discussion? I've got a question. What will be the salary of Deb Brown for that committee?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Okay. We have a first and a second?
Yes.
We do?
Carol Ann.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and then future prospects? That was included?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, done. Reports, superintendent. You have a report?
I do. I've had an opportunity to get into some classrooms. What a joy it's been to see students learning, teachers engaged in what they're doing. From Mrs. Hall's fourth grade classroom, where students were taking a little kinesthetic break with Raise the Roof. If you haven't seen it, they're doing a lot of whooping, and it was a good break in their math, and they got right back to work. Mr. Brown's classroom, taking a look at his time in India. Middle schoolers working with the youngest kids during theme day, which was an excellent day, very well crafted by our principal. Native American, sixth graders, it's just a real pleasure to be in the building and seeing our kids and our teachers. Shortly after the school board approved the 16-17 goals for the year, I sent out an invitation to the staff. I wanted to share that information with them. And while looking at our second goal about excitement in learning, I invited interested teachers to meet with me to tell me about lessons and activities that they teach that engage in real world lessons that make kids really use their content but solve problems. And so on September 28th and October 6th, I met with 21 teachers who told me about a fourth grade economics lesson that integrated writing and math and design and selling, and sounds fabulous. Social thinking in preschool. Second graders who are learning their math facts through rock songs. Creating reading rates in fifth grade for differentiation. An eighth grade outdoor integrated unit, and strategies in Spanish, and just on and on. I just want to thank all the teachers who took their time to meet with me after school for over an hour just to talk about the lessons that they loved doing. To continue that dialogue, I've invited all interested staff to join me in a book discussion group on classroom instruction that works. Books will be purchased for the 15 staff who have expressed an interest, and I'm very confident that this is going to become part of the discussions that take place at grade levels to continue to cement and grow our groundswell of offering diverse learning in our classrooms. The Professional Development Committee met recently to determine the need for PD this year. And to ensure that all staff are aware of workshop availability, we're going to start using the district catalog in my learning plan. And this tool will make it easy for staff to go in and offer professional development, and even easier for our teachers to sign up for it. Plans, we've already talked about the sustained math that'll be going on. We've got Chris Toy coming back for a day and a half this year. I'm sure Chris will talk more about that. And we've got a workshop series already set up to help teachers implement and create authentic learning experiences that will be starting in November. So we've had a lot happening in PD, and we look forward to moving forward with that. Each year you've mentioned the special ed that you got in your packet. We did get the IDEA bring back, and just to see that all of our areas were in full compliance. So this goes back about a year and a half or so, but excellent, excellent work. A little bit about technology. The start of the year, we had some technology challenges as we started the year. Some real unexpected problems that kind of slowed us down from some of the work that we wanted to do on day one. But we've had a great team: Carl Nickerson, Aaron Miller, Naeem, Mike Major, Dave Miller. Our one-to-one Chromebook program is underway, and our newly crafted responsible user policy is in and done. Our students are using technology to practice their math, to do iExcel, they're honing math skills, they're doing coding. It's good to see them using all of that. We also have our tech committee, which will be looking at various forms of communication. I'm looking at some mobile apps so that we can push out more information to our parents and make it more timely. It was my privilege to attend and say a few words at the National Junior Honor Society induction on September 22nd. We had 15 new inductees, and all of whom who have demonstrated strong leadership, citizenship, character, and service. They are really to be commended, very proud parents, and a great job by Ms. Griggs. I recently met with Richard Brown, the president of the Alton Teachers Association, to review and prepare for teacher observations. I've also met with the administrative team, and just to make sure that everyone is on the same page as we start that process, and that has already begun. Just to wrap up, earlier this month I attended the Kidder Law Conference just to keep informed about the latest legislative actions, and it, as always, very informative. And just wanted to add my congratulations, even though Denise is gone, who has become a board member of the New Hampshire Council of Teachers of English, and I know that she will represent Alton very well on that state board. So it's been a busy month, and we've accomplished some and more to do. Thank you.
Just a quick question to the superintendent. Each teacher has a minimum of $2,000 for professional development funds.
Correct.
Okay, and more than that if needed. And so do all the paraeducators.
They have 200.
They have 200.
Yeah.
Okay, they have 200. Is there any reason why those teachers in English and math should be taking advantage of that professional development funds that are available?
They absolutely should. And I know that Chris encourages them to do that regularly.
You know, given the smarter balance results.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Terrific.
It's actually one of the items on my thank you list for this principal's report.
I'll take it. Anybody else? Okay. Chris, the principal's report, please.
I'll start with the fact that Paul Roberts and I have just completed a series of meeting with all fourth grade students. There's a bulletin board there where they wrote their goals on footballs, and it was a darling bulletin board. And it was just so fetching and compelling. I read all the footballs. Then I talked to the fourth grade teachers, divided the kids up in 6 main categories of what types of things that their goals aligned with. And Paul and I met with 8 groups of kids based on a little cohort with similar interest and similar goals. But that was exciting, but the really exciting part of it was being able to come up with immediate action plans for these goals. For instance, Dave Miller, the book sale that we've just had, the Osborne books that were just here for the parent-teacher conferences, we earned some free books from that book sale. So one of the cohorts in this fourth grade group is concerned that the library doesn't have enough trendy books that are not young adult, and they're chapter books, but they need to be for their age group. Right away, when I mentioned this to Dave, he said, I can help that. Dave's going to go meet with that same little cohort, and they're going to help pick the free books that we earned from this is breaking news from today. They're going to get to be the beneficiaries and pick the books that are going to be for fourth grade that we're getting free from the book fair. It's an immediate turnaround based on the input from these kids. Another group was particularly heartwarming. They wanted to know more about the school. They felt that as fourth graders, they were big enough to know more about the school. So in talking to them, we said, what do you mean the school? And they said, well, where do you keep stuff? And where are the hula hoops when we don't have them in phys ed? They really wanted to tour the building. Paul said right away, I'm new here too, so let's go on a school tour. So he's going to take kids on an to the entrails of the building and let them see the whole building. But I think that if that's a goal and these kids realized they could articulate it and an adult cared and listened and they get something from the goal, I think it was one of the most exciting couple of days ever was to get to have these meetings. And really I want to thank Jill and Sarah and Pam for their interest and support and the way they took the idea and then made the time. It was happened during WIN time, so that was another use of WIN, was to be able to have these kids have these meetings. First item, we have a map of November, December, and January because it had been established that the board wanted to see student presentations. So I can tell you that in November, you will have a student presentation. It'll be the students that did the Native American project that we had the displays of during parent-teacher conferences. And that was recently in the Baysider. There will be, in December, student club update with some students in our clubs giving you a presentation about what they do and why their club is important. And January, we'll have some STEM projects and some students talking about what the STEM is in their school day for them. Next item, I've been very pleased with meeting with PTSA members, and I don't know if she wants us to talk about her. She's sitting right here, but you were right here on my list before you walked in, Sarah. Sarah did incredible research. It sounds so simple to say we want to have a popcorn day in the school, but the way Mrs. Grasso went about looking at other schools that do it, figuring out what does it cost, figuring out when do the kids get the popcorn, how does that work, was really outstanding. And it gives great comfort to me to know that we can have this idea that sounds just so easy and every kid's going to have popcorn. But how she approached it, how she did it, how she piloted it on October 6th on the thematic unit day, because that was part of our celebration outdoors, was every kid had popcorn. But now there's a plan in place supported by the PTSA that our school will be one that has popcorn days, official popcorn days. And it's really thanks to her research and her launching the idea. So I can't thank you enough for that. It's really a peace of mind to know the professionalism she put into it. Natasha Urena, our part-time physical education teacher, is bringing Girls on the Run to Alton Central School with the help of 3 additional coaches, Nicole Poland, Doreen LeMay, and Nicole Ryan. Girls on the Run, you might have heard about it, or you're going to read about it shortly, because a lot of schools are doing this. It's really a empowerment, self-discipline kind of a thing to have kids ultimately end up running a 5K. So they start now with the curriculum on wellness, safety, toning up, and exercise, and practice running, and they are going to conduct, with the help of Alton Police Department as well, designing the route. They're going to have a 5K here. It starts in early March, so it's an X week, I forget the number of weeks program, but then early June, late May will be the time that these kids really do the 5K run. And it's new to Alton. It's very exciting. Natasha, as a part-time phys ed teacher, brings full-time zest and full-time creativity to her position. We're really fortunate that she's here. Pam did talk a little bit about Chris Toy coming back. Chris and Jill will come back our December 15th early release day and our March 22nd in-service day. But in between then, it's been exciting for me to take input from teachers. What do you want to do more? What have you already done? A couple of teachers are going to be able to send off, and I call it pen pal, but get feedback from them, from Chris and Jill, about that lesson, how the technology worked. Naeem and Aaron and Carl have been key in making sure that they have what they need after Chris and Jill were gone to go on with this, and you'll be seeing a couple of the teachers' newsletters reflecting some differences based on technology and things that they learned from Chris and Jill. So I'm being the interface, working with those 2 presenters to find out the specifics that we're going to need and look at for the afternoon of December 15th. Another item is Todd DeMitchell, UNH professor, and he's the lead person for New Hampshire Institute of Civics Education. It's called NHICE. He contacted everybody on a listserv to find out input about what are we doing in Alton for civics education. And I know that's been a topic that's come up from this school board off and on over the years. Where's civics in our curriculum? And in the course of talking back and forth with him and giving him some ideas and discussing with him some of the things we have on board, because we even have our STEM teachers talking about ethics and digital citizenship, which fits into civics. He said, well, actually what he wanted to do was donate some books to our library. So that's breaking news too. I told that to Dave Miller today, and of all things, Todd DeMitchell was Dave Miller's law and public education professor back in the day, so for his CAG. So it was exciting for Dave to be able to to know this about Todd. Todd didn't know it was Dave. I just said we have a library media specialist who's really keen on promoting books and doing book talks and doing that kind of thing. Not your kind of book talk, but like where a teacher reads a little snippet, gets kids excited, and then closes the book, and the kids all get in line to check out the book is what's supposed to happen. So Todd was very interested in donating these books to us. So we'll be seeing those. They're historical novels based on Revolutionary War heroes in New Hampshire. Those are my main topics. I wanted to offer a couple of thank yous. I already did thank Jill Moulton, Sarah Hall, and Pam Matthews for the work that they did to make my simple idea of having the classroom meetings with the fourth graders blossom into something very big with these actionable items. I wanted to thank Denise Perry because she really is doing a good job of spreading information about professional development opportunities. She does blast emails, she does targeted emails, and she's put paper material in a notebook in the faculty lounge so people can cruise through it, browse through it, and maybe network with somebody during lunchtime or other downtimes or work times in there to say, hey, do you want to go to this with me? Or do you want to go? Or I went last year, I recommend it, that kind of thing. So it's on a very grounds up level that we have the PD being broadcast. The custodial staff needs a thank you for everything they did for the Parent-Teacher Conference Day. It involved being on hand for the book fair, to be in the patio lobby, setting up those tables, dismantling those tables, as well as the work they did to get the cafeteria quickly cleaned up on Thursday, ultra quick, so the first parents who had an appointment at 1 o'clock could see the 5th grade Native American displays that were in there. And I wanted to thank Chris Quarton. Right now she's between two jobs, serving as in her bookkeeper capacity and in her 8th grade teaching capacity right now. So she's between these two positions, and I think she's juggling a couple of things with a lot of dignity and a huge learning curve while keeping the support she needs to with the students that she's with up in the middle school wing. So I can't thank her enough for what she's bringing to our administrative wing.
Thanks, Chris.
Those are my items. Thank you.
Just a quick question comes to mind.
I'll try.
Why did we eliminate the guest reader program?
I don't think we did. Guest reader? You mean coming into class? I don't think we did. I think it's taken on more of a life of its own in March as part of Read Across America for Dr. Seuss, celebrating Dr. Seuss's birthday. The actual birthday tends to be during our vacation week.
You had it last year?
We had, on a very different scale we had it, because what we did was different, because we did have PTSA, did quite a lot of things with us for Dr. Seuss's birthday, the Read Across America week. And Jackie, we had a couple of guest readers, because we actually had a couple of authors, local authors, come in and read. But as far as invited guests in, it hasn't gone away, but I think there could have been a hiatus for that week, but I fully expect people to get invitations as they had in the past.
I'm going to just pass on the maintenance report. We did mow the grass, we checked the boilers, okay, and the panic buttons worked wonderful. Okay. Let me see, next, and I'm sorry I skipped it the first time, and it's certainly open to any subject, is public input on anything you'd like to talk about. Anybody from the audience on public input? Come on down.
I wanted to thank everyone for the presentations tonight. I do think, just in looking, it's much colder here than there. In looking at the test results that were reported, I know there were some areas of deficiency, but it seems like there were some areas where we really did excel and there was some growth. So I think that's good progress. And when you have a school of our size, you don't turn the Titanic around overnight, so it's going to take a little bit of time. So I think it's important that we focus on the progress we made and keep making that progress incrementally rather than kind of having this, we're failing. We're not failing, we're doing a pretty good job there. Super excited to hear about Girls on the Run coming to the school. I actually just yesterday had a thought of approaching you about that, so thank you for bringing that to our school district.
Natasha will need a lot of other volunteer help, you can imagine, to bring this together. So the co-coaching positions, people have volunteered. If that's something that interests you, you're welcome, but I know how much it takes from hearing her talk about what it's going to take to pull it off. So I hope you're excited about it and you'll be happy to help, or that you will help us. Good, yeah, thank you.
And then the only other thing, and I don't know how much weight I have as a parent, but I would like to put out there, I would love for us to be able to revisit the length of our school day. It's quite long, especially for some of our younger kids. So if there's anything that we can do to kind of investigate what our options might be, we have one of the longer school days in the district. It would be great to be able to reassess and maybe find ways to drive more value into the hours rather than dragging those hours out over the course of the day.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Future agenda items. In the budget?
No, well,
Or what?
that too. I mean, prior to the start of the meeting, I just have an update to the budget, which I had passed out to the board. But Pam and I also have an update from our last board meeting that the board had requested us look into. There was an expressed interest in creating netting around baseball area and a higher backstop. And we do have some quotes on that. And there are not 3, there are 2. But the netting came in at about $32.85. And the taking down of backstops and then putting up what's needed in the concrete and making them 20 feet high came in at $10,250. And what was some? $250. Yeah. But based on the price, requires by board policy 3 quotes. So we didn't want to not tell you, but we're still gathering the information.
So is there any way of putting a top on what we have? Probably
This is
not.
what it's doing. It's extending it to 20 feet. Right now, it's at 10 feet.
We need a lower quote.
You need a what?
A lower quote,
A lower quote.
yes.
Well, we have 2, and of the 2, that was the lower quote.
We need a lower quote.
How much do we have in the safety account?
We will have nothing. We're
We will
withdrawing
have-
that. You approved. But we have Buildings and Grounds Expendable Trust.
But nothing in the safety and
No.
we haven't put any in that for a while.
No, we just put 60,000 in this past July, but it was already used for the asbestos in the fencing.
But if it doesn't have a top, all it is a foul ball that the catcher can catch, and it's an out.
Well, the
It's
sad
right by
part
the
is when I
playground.
hit,
Huh?
It's right by the playground, and it only goes 10 feet.
I
The
thought you
soft-
talked, I thought you were talking softball.
Softball, there's netting there, but it's dilapidated and probably past its
yeah, it's kind of blowing in the wind.
expectancy.
Historically, there's really nobody in the playground when the boys play baseball.
Oh, the thing's loaded with kids. I saw a woman end up with a bruise that big on her cheek.
Whatever.
We'll bring you back a 3rd quote, but we wanted you to at least know we're looking at it. It hasn't been And we're forgotten, gathering. and we'll get you a 3rd one next
A
meeting.
third lower quote.
Hopefully.
Gotcha.
Nobody there when they're practicing, but usually.
We had a budget workshop, and it's still a work in progress, but suffice it to say, we're not looking for any type of significant increase in the budget and hoping it to bring it in at least on a flat basis. That might be doable.
I'd say so.
Okay. Let me see here, Bill and Grounds, other business, future, non-public. Next is non-public. I need a motion to go into non-public.
Or,
Personnel. You wanted to look at new hires, you said.
Yeah, new hires, that's
Oh.
91-A:3-2B.
second,
Second? Yes?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into non-public. Thank you, people.
Thanks.
Well,